Chapter 9:15. Yi Xian swung the shadowless sword lightly, and the blade disappeared. It was as if Yi Xian was using the hilt to slash someone. Unfortunately, the shadowless sword was just for show. For someone of his level, the shadowless sword was useless. Then, Yi Xian took out the fallen star whip. The fallen star whip was also a level 1 supreme spiritual treasure. Yi Xian struck the ground with it. Bang! The ground suddenly exploded. This was the effect of the fallen star whip. As long as it hit the enemy, there would be an explosion effect, increasing its power. Luo Luo, the fallen star whip is ready, but you don't know how to use it? Yi Xian handed the fallen star whip over and asked. Hee, it's in my inherited memory. Also, it can help me quickly comprehend sword force. Luo Luo suddenly smiled mischievously. Quickly comprehend sword force? Yi Xian raised his eyebrows. This girl actually had such a good thing in her inherited memory. No wonder she chose to forge the fallen star whip instead of the shadowless sword. In addition, sword force was actually a general term. After all, sword force was the most common weapon. In addition to sword force, there were also knife force, and so on. However, people were used to calling it sword force. This girl's bloodline is too mysterious. I can't believe she even has this. I can't fall behind. Yi Xian narrowed his eyes and said, Luo Luo, did you take all the things you wanted? Yes, these things are all very high level. I can refine them very quickly. Maybe my realm will be higher than yours? Luo Luo smiled and handed the interspatial ring back. Ahem. Yi Xian took the interspatial ring awkwardly and found that at least 4/5 of the things inside were gone. Ding! The host has broken through. You are now at the mid-stage of the 8th Tribulation Supreme Master. The system notified. Those things were only enough for Yi Xian to break through once. If he gave everything to him, he could at least reach the peak of the 8th Tribulation Supreme Master. However, he didn't say much. After all, Luo Luo was only in the middle stage of the 7th Supreme Martial Artist. She was 2 realms lower than him. When Luo Luo's realm increased, her strength would also be very strong. For the rest of the time, Luo Luo was refining the heavenly treasures that even the elders were envious of. Yi Xian was also sitting there quietly. He had already recorded the sword-shaped stone in the devouring system. As long as he wanted to, he could study it at any time. I only have 70.5 sword intent. The people from the Absolute Een Palace will definitely come knocking on my door. I have to increase my strength so that I can participate in the battle when the time comes. Yi Xian squinted his eyes and began to study the sword-shaped stone. It would take at least 3 days for the Absolute Een Palace's team to arrive from the 10,000 Swords Villa's secret realm entrance. And in these 3 days, Yi Xian's strength could still improve by quite a bit. Yi Xian was meditating on the sword-shaped stone in his residence. In less than an hour, he heard a notification sound. Ding! 75% sword intent has transformed. It is now 85% sword intent. After half a day. Ding! 85% sword intent has transformed. It is now 85% sword intent. After a day. In Yi Xian's residence, the sovereign tribulation lightning started to gather above him. This was Luo Luo's breakthrough. In a day, Luo Luo relied on her extraordinary refining speed to break through from the 7th Supremacy Realm to the 7th Supremacy Realm peak. At the same time, she also reached the limit and successfully received the 8th Supremacy Tribulation. Rumble! 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 8 consecutive sovereign tribulation lightning struck down. Luo Luo, who was in the courtyard, stood there quietly and took the 8 sovereign tribulation lightning head-on. Among the cultivation resources given by the Hall Master of the Burning Sun Hall, there were hundreds of sovereign golden pills. Previously, Luo Luo had spent a lot of time refining the utmost being golden pellets. However, as her cultivation level increased, her refining speed also increased. In addition to her bloodline and charm fusion crystal, Luo Luo refined 100 utmost being golden pellets in a single day. The 8th Supremacy Tribulation was no threat to Luo Luo. Rumble! After the last sovereign tribulation lightning struck, Luo Luo broke through to the 8th Supremacy Realm. Now, Luo Luo's combat power was probably comparable to a 9th Supremacy Realm. If she consumed golden hair and transformed into a golden fox, even the Hall Master of the Burning Sun Hall would have to take her seriously. There are 2 more days. Continue to cultivate. After Luo successfully passed the tribulation, Yi Xian continued to comprehend the sword-shaped stone. When the Jianghu palace came knocking on his door, he would show off his skills. If the patriarch of the Jianghu palace was still alive, he might come. At that time, the patriarch of the Burning Sun Hall would definitely appear. As long as the siblings were related to the Jianyang patriarch, Yi Xian would naturally ask about it. Of course, even if he didn't ask, he still had the round jade pendant left by old immortal Tianzhu. As long as he broke through to the 3 sovereign disasters, he would know about the Jianyang patriarch. The remaining 2 days passed in a flash. In these 2 days, Luo refined a large amount of things. Although there was still a lot of medicinal effects left in her body, and there were still many heavenly treasures left, she directly broke through to the 8th supremacy realm, the same level as Yi Xian. Luo and Yi Xian signed a master and servant blood contract, which caused Yi Xian's beast god bloodline to mutate twice. Therefore, his growth speed increased by 30%. Yi Xian expected such a fast cultivation speed. In these 2 days, although Yi Xian's realm didn't increase, he continuously comprehended the sword-shaped stone, and had already raised his sword intent to 90%. In the supremacy realm, the highest level was the 9th tribulation supremacy realm, and the sword intent was only 95%. When the sword intent transformed to 100%, it would condense into power and sword force. In 3 days, Yi Xian's sword intent had increased from 75% to 90%. With the shadowless sword in hand, his attack power was extremely strong. Even in the entire Burning Yang Hall, there were probably less than 3 people who could withstand a single strike from him. Because the Burning Sun Hall was peaceful, Yi Xian and Luo continued to cultivate. They didn't know if the Jianghu palace was scared or something, but they still hadn't arrived after 3 days. Could it be that they were afraid that the Burning Sun Hall's ancestor was still alive, and would rush out and catch them all in one fell swoop? However, just as Yi Xian was thinking about this problem, a roar suddenly came from the sky. "Bastards of the Burning Sun Hall, get the hell out here!" This was a woman's voice, and it sounded very old. Not only that, Yi Xian had heard this voice before. It was the palace master of the Jianghu palace. "They're here." After hearing this roar, Yi Xian and Luo opened their eyes at the same time. Hee, they're finally here. If they didn't come, I would have been bored to death. Luo stretched her back and walked out. Yi Xian was also helpless. This girl really wanted to see the world in chaos. But speaking of which, he had comprehended the sword-shaped stone for 3 days, and his strength had increased by at least 10 times compared to when he was in the Myriad Sword Manor secret realm. Chapter 9:16. When Yi Xian walked outside, he discovered that the hall master of the Burning Sun Hall and the others were hurriedly cutting through the air and flying towards the entrance of the Burning Sun Hall. Yi Xian and Luo quickly followed them. The disciples of the Burning Sun Hall who were alarmed by the sudden shout also hurriedly followed after him. Who was it that had the guts to come to the Burning Sun Hall and make a ruckus? The Burning Sun Hall was one of the top powers in the royal sacred dynasty. There weren't many who dared to challenge them. Moreover, the voice belonged to an old woman. Thus, the disciples of the Burning Sun Hall guessed that the people who came were from the Jianghu palace. When the hall master of the Burning Sun Hall obtained the sword-shaped stone, he had already started making arrangements and notified the elders outside to return. This time, there was going to be a huge battle. When Yi Xian arrived at the entrance of the Burning Sun Hall, he saw that there was already a group of people outside the protective array. There were more women than men in this group. They were the group from the Jianghu palace that Yi Xian had encountered in the secret territory of the Myriad Swords Manor. The palace master of the Jianghu palace was also among them. "Everyone, my Burning Sun Hall and your Jianghu palace have been fighting for hundreds of years. This is the first time you have gathered so many people to come here. May I know the reason?" The Burning Sun Hall master pretended not to know anything and asked. "Cut the crap. You already know the answer and you still want to pretend that you don't know anything?" The palace master of the Jianghu palace walked out with his walking stick. "Humph, I haven't even said that your Jianghu palace planted a spy in my Burning Sun Hall and you're already making false accusations?" The Burning Sun Hall master snorted coldly. At this time, a female disciple of the Jianghu palace suddenly walked forward and pointed at Yi Xian. "Palace master, it was him that day." Everyone's gaze followed her finger and landed on Yi Xian. "Me? What about me?" Yi Xian walked out. "Brat, let's not beat around the bush. That sword-shaped stone was snatched by you, right?" The palace master of the Jianghu palace looked at Yi Xian. Senior, why do you think so? Yi Xian asked in return. As soon as he finished his words, someone jumped out and said, "If it wasn't you, who else could it be?" Yi Xian sneered and said, "What a joke. When I left the secret territory that day, I was surrounded by a group of you palace masters. Your palace master even wanted to capture me. Your palace master wanted to capture me." That's right. If it wasn't for junior brother Ye's secret skill, I'm afraid that we would have already been killed. My Burning Sun Hall has fought with your Jianghu palace for so many years. When have you ever shown mercy? Although the sword-shaped stone fell into Yi Xian's hands in the end, Wen Kong and the other two had contributed quite a bit, so they obtained quite a few benefits. 3 days ago, Wen Kong had consumed a heavenly treasure and grown a new arm. This sentence made the people of the Jianghu palace speechless. If they put themselves in Yi Xian's shoes, how could they not run when they encountered the palace master of the Jianghu palace? We didn't come here today for this matter. There were a few experts from the imperial family in the sword tomb. They witnessed the whole thing. The palace master of the Jianghu palace snorted and said, "That brat killed Ma Cheng, who was ranked 5th in the inner sect of the Jianghu palace. He also killed a great elder of the imperial family. This is the truth." Then, senior, how can you prove that what he said is true? Yi Xian asked again. At that time, the team of the Jianghu palace had been killed by Yi Xian. At the same time, Yi Xian did find other people. But after Yi Xian killed Ma Cheng, the 9th Tribulation Supreme Master of the Jianghu palace came. So, Yi Xian didn't have time to kill other people. What those people said was only a verbal statement of facts. There was no concrete evidence. Humph, I don't care so much. I only know that the sword-shaped stone is in your palace of the Jianghu palace. Today, you better hand it over. Otherwise, your palace of the Jianghu palace will be destroyed soon. The palace master of the Jianghu palace saw that they had no choice but to shed all pretense of cordiality. "Ha ha, what a joke. You dare to say that you will destroy my palace of the Jianghu palace?" The palace master of the Jianghu palace laughed when he saw the other party's expression. "You better choose to believe that we don't plan to keep the sword-shaped stone for ourselves. We will give it to the imperial family." The palace master of the Jianghu palace replied. "What a joke. If you get the sword-shaped stone, will you give it to the imperial family?" The palace master of the Jianghu palace sneered. The palace master of the Jianghu palace continued. "Do you know how the Myriad Sword Villa was destroyed hundreds of years ago? An innocent man gets into trouble because of his wealth. After the sword-shaped stone of the Myriad Sword Villa was exposed, it was secretly destroyed by the imperial family." What? After the palace master of the Jianghu palace finished speaking, the people of the palace of the Jianghu palace were shocked. Not only that, the people of the palace of the Jianghu palace were also shocked. It was their first time hearing this secret. The Myriad Sword Villa was a powerful force hundreds of years ago. It was not any weaker than the palace of the Jianghu palace and the palace of the Jianghu palace. However, it chose to disappear in the end because it was secretly destroyed by the imperial family. Even the palace master of the Jianghu palace did not know about this secret. Really? The palace master of the Jianghu palace swallowed his saliva. Although the palace of the Jianghu palace was powerful, the imperial family could secretly destroy the Myriad Sword Villa that was comparable to the palace of the Jianghu palace hundreds of years ago. Why else do you think the Myriad Sword Villa was destroyed? That secret realm was the place where the Myriad Sword Villa was forging. However, when the imperial family's experts arrived, they did not know that the sword-shaped stone was exposed. Therefore, other than the villa master of the Myriad Sword Villa, no one survived. The palace master of the Jianghu palace explained. After hearing this, the people of the palace of the Jianghu palace felt that it made sense. Yi Xian himself had entered the Myriad Sword Villa's secret realm. However, he did not meet anyone from the Myriad Sword Villa in the secret realm. After all, it was just a place for forging. When the Myriad Sword Villa was destroyed, only the villa master left. He probably returned to the secret realm when he was being hunted down and destroyed the entrance to prevent the imperial family from finding it. Because it was a secret place for forging, all the people inside were men. However, the villa master of the Myriad Sword Villa destroyed the entrance himself. If he did not destroy it, the imperial family would definitely find the entrance. It was also because of this that all the people who stayed in the secret realm died in the end. According to Wen Kong, There were many tombs in the palace. One of them was the villa master of the Myriad Sword Villa. After thinking about it, Xian also felt that it was very scary. The villa master of the Myriad Sword Villa destroyed the entrance to the secret realm to avoid being hunted down. What was even more helpless was that the people who stayed in the secret realm were all men. If there were some women, the Myriad Sword Villa would not have been completely wiped out. They could have lived in the secret realm and not been destroyed. Chapter 9:17. However, there was one thing that Xian did not understand. The secret realm was actually a corner of the world. The entrance to the secret realm was equivalent to a portal. That was why Xian's Eye of the Void could not return to the Burning Sun Palace directly from the secret realm. He had to leave the secret realm first. Xian guessed that the secret realm was an island, or there was a formation around it that prevented people from leaving. But then again, the Burning Sun Hall Master hesitated after hearing those words. "Old man, I advise you to hand it over to us," the Palace Master of the Een Palace said. These words sounded like he was thinking for the sake of Burning Sun Hall, but no one present was an idiot. The sword-shaped stone was extremely precious. Even if the Burning Sun Palace Master could not keep it, they would still be rewarded if they handed it over. How could the Een Palace Master take the sword-shaped stone away? "You guys have a good plan. You want me to hand over the sword-shaped stone to you, then you will hand it over to the Imperial family?" The Burning Sun Palace Master sneered. Without a doubt, this sentence was an admission. At this point, they had no choice but to admit it. "So, the sword-shaped stone is in the Burning Sun Palace Master?" The Palace Master of the Een Palace narrowed his eyes. "That's right," the Burning Sun Palace Master shouted. In the next moment, a stone that looked like a long sword appeared in his hand. It was the sword-shaped stone. When the Palace Master of the Een Palace and the others saw it, their eyes lit up. "This is the sword-shaped stone?" The Palace Master of the Een Palace raised his eyebrows. Even the imperial family of the royal sacred dynasty did not have a sword-shaped stone. Otherwise, why would the 10,000 swords manor be destroyed? Xian knew how precious the sword-shaped stone was. He only spent 3 days to raise his 75% sword intent to 90% sword intent. A single sword-shaped stone was enough to create a top force that could even fight against the imperial family. A few hundred years ago, the imperial family of the royal sacred dynasty was afraid that the 10,000 swords manor would become stronger, so they destroyed it. "It is impossible for me to hand over the sword-shaped stone." The sword-shaped stone was obtained by the disciples of the Burning Sun Palace. "It is impossible for the Een Palace Master to take it away." The Burning Sun Palace Master put the sword-shaped stone away. "Humph, the Myriad Sword Villa's secret realm was found in the territory of my absolute Een Palace. How about this? The Jianghu Een Palace will also take a step back. We will hand over the sword-shaped stone to the imperial family, and we will split the reward equally," the Palace Master of the Jianghu Een Palace suggested. "So what if the 10,000 swords manor's forging mystic realm is in your absolute Een Palace's territory? Your Jianghu Een Palace is still in the royal sacred dynasty. Doesn't that mean that everything in your Jianghu Een Palace belongs to the royal clan?" An elder of the Burning Sun Hall coldly snorted. The Palace Master of the absolute Een Palace glanced at her and said, "So you don't agree?" "Not bad," the Burning Sun Hall Master replied. He could have given it to the royal family by himself, so why did he have to share the benefits with another person? As long as one was not a fool, one would not do such a thing. Most importantly, he was in the territory of the Burning Sun Palace. Now that the Jianghu Palace had come knocking on his door, it was an excellent opportunity. So long as he killed all these people from the Een Palace, then the Een Palace would be finished. However, right at that moment, suddenly, a powerful aura caused everyone to tremble. This powerful aura came from the team of the Jianghu Een Palace. The team of the Jianghu Een Palace started to split into two. Then a figure slowly walked out. It was a red-clothed lady who looked to be in her 30s. Ancestor. When the Palace Master of the Jianghu Palace saw this person, he respectfully greeted her. Boom. This form of address frightened the people from the Burning Sun Hall. Was this red-clothed lady the founder of the Jianghu Een Palace? So powerful. I'm afraid she is a 9th supreme being. Xian shuddered. The Burning Sun Hall Master was only a 9th supreme being, and this lady was even more powerful than him. Greetings, Senior. The Burning Sun Hall Master did not expect this red-clothed lady to be here, so he hurriedly greeted her respectfully.
The red-clothed lady ignored him and said softly, "Senior brother, are you not coming out to see me?"
Although her voice was soft, it reverberated in the air and spread throughout the entire Burning Sun Hall. However, the way she addressed him frightened the others. "Senior brother, that's senior brother? Aren't they siblings?" Xian raised his eyebrows. He understood that the red-clothed lady was greeting the founder of the Burning Sun Hall. Not long after, another voice echoed in the air. "Junior sister, let's go back." It was obvious that the founder of the Burning Sun Hall was not dead. "Senior brother, don't you know the importance of the sword-shaped stone?" The red-clothed lady shouted again. This time, the founder of the Burning Sun Hall finally came out. He was a white-clothed youth with dashing eyebrows. "So powerful, I can't sense any aura from him. He's just like an ordinary person." Xian swallowed his saliva. With the eye of perception, he could not sense the other party's realm. This person was definitely much more powerful than the red-clothed lady, and might be about to pass the human body disaster. "Senior brother, you finally came out." The red-clothed lady smiled and said, "Don't worry, I have no other purpose today." "What do you want to say?" the youth with dashing eyebrows asked. "The sword-shaped stone is very useful to us, but you have to know that it's not something we can get our hands on. The 10,000 Swords Manor is a good example. If we don't hand it over to the Imperial family, I'm afraid that our two factions will end up like the 10,000 Swords Manor," the red-clothed lady said. Unexpectedly, the youth with dashing eyebrows immediately said, "I won't give up on this sword-shaped stone." "Senior brother, you're still as stubborn as before. Since the Imperial family hasn't arrived yet, we still have a way to share this sword-shaped stone," the red-clothed lady said. "Share the sword-shaped stone." After hearing this, Xian's body trembled. Was the two factions joining forces? "Even if our two factions join forces, we won't be able to go against the Imperial family. You're saying that you want to open up a secret realm and let my Burning Sun Hall and your unending palace enter together to comprehend this sword-shaped stone?" The youth with dashing eyebrows squinted his eyes. "That's right. We can follow the example of the 10,000 Swords Manor. As long as we destroy the entrance to the secret realm, even the Imperial family won't be able to find it." The red-clothed lady nodded. The reason why the 10,000 Swords Manor didn't have a single person in the secret realm was because those who stayed there hundreds of years ago were all men, and there wasn't a single woman. However, the Burning Sun Hall mainly consisted of men, while the unending palace had many women. As long as they joined forces and brought some supreme saint beasts into the secret realm, they could live a good life. Chapter 9:18. Then why are you not willing to give up on this stone? If the Imperial army arrives, the Burning Sun Hall will definitely be destroyed. The lady in red reminded him. "I will not give up," the man with sword-like eyebrows replied. Both parties were in a stalemate. After hearing this, everyone present felt a sense of pressure. It was a good way to enter the secret realm. Although there were men and women, old and young, and even supreme sacred beasts, who could stay in a sealed place for hundreds of years. However, the founder of the Burning Sun Hall was unwilling to give up on this stone. If the Imperial army arrived, the Burning Sun Hall would definitely be destroyed. "Master?" The Burning Sun Hall master frowned and looked at the young man with sword-like eyebrows. "Don't worry, I have already opened up a new secret realm. This secret realm has 2 entrances. If the Imperial army arrives, we will enter and destroy this entrance." The young man with sword-like eyebrows was not worried at all. "What?" When the others heard this, they were shocked. No wonder the founder of the Burning Sun Hall was so calm. It turned out that he had already prepared a way out. "Junior sister, please go back," the young man with sword-like eyebrows said to the lady in red. However, at this moment, roar! Suddenly, a deafening sound entered everyone's ears. When they listened carefully, it sounded like the roar of a giant beast. "It's the Imperial Dragon." The young man with sword-like eyebrows and the lady in red's faces changed. They had heard this sound once before. "Quick, let everyone enter the secret realm entrance under my secret cultivation room," the young man with sword-like eyebrows hurriedly ordered. The news should have only reached the Imperial family after 3 days. The young man with sword-like eyebrows did not expect them to arrive so quickly. When the young man with sword-like eyebrows finished speaking, a huge figure descended from the sky. It was a brown giant dragon that was at least a few thousand meters long. It was extremely huge, and there were various strange patterns on its body. Immediately after, people jumped down from the dragon's back one by one. The Imperial army had finally arrived. Burning Sun Hall. How dare you hide a sword-shaped stone? I will give you 10 breaths to hand it over to me. Otherwise, I will exterminate your entire sect. A rough-looking man rushed over, followed by 2 people wearing the Imperial family's uniform. 3 Ninth Supreme Being Peak Supreme Beings. The young man's expression changed. He was in trouble now. At this moment, the Burning Sun Hall Master had already started to evacuate the disciples. However, how could 10 breaths of time be enough?
Although there were only 1,000 soldiers from the Imperial family, all of them were elites of the 7th Supreme Martial Artist realm and above.
This wasn't the main point. The main point was that there were still 3 Ninth Tribulation Supremacies from the royal family, and more than 20 Ninth Tribulation Supremacies. This wasn't something that the Burning Sun Hall could deal with. Hee, it seems like you don't want to hand it over. All soldiers, listen up, break the formation. The boorish man shouted when he saw the Burning Sun Hall evacuating its disciples. In an instant, countless attacks were launched at the grand array of the Burning Sun Hall. Rumble! A series of deafening explosions rang out. Women of the Jianghu Palace, back off for me. Otherwise, I'll kill all of you as well. The boorish man shouted at the Jianghu Palace as he attacked. At this moment, Absolute Jianghu Palace was in a dilemma. The lady in red obviously wanted to help the young man, but the young man's intentions had been seen through. The Imperial family army had already started to attack. Once the formation was broken, the Burning Sun Hall would be in danger.
Ancestral Master, what should we do?
The palace master of the Jianghu Palace asked with a frown.
Let's retreat first.
The lady in red said softly. In fact, she still wanted to help the Burning Sun Hall. Although the enmity between the Jianghu Palace and the Burning Sun Hall had been accumulating for hundreds of years, it was actually caused by some disciples 100 years ago. At first, the Jianghu Palace accidentally killed a disciple of the Burning Sun Hall, so the conflict arose. However, the lady in red hadn't appeared to resolve it in the past 100 years. Only by continuing to fight could she ensure that her senior brother wouldn't forget about her. Immediately, the Jianghu Palace's team retreated a long distance. This time, the Jianghu Palace had also brought many experts.
Other than the lady in red, the palace master of the Jianghu Palace, and the Great Elder, there were also 4 Ninth Tribulation Supremacies. If they joined forces with the Burning Sun Hall, they wouldn't be afraid of the Imperial army. However, behind the Imperial army was the entire Imperial family. Once they made a move, they would be challenging the authority of the Imperial family. At that time, the entire Jianghu Palace would be dragged into the water and fall into a state of eternal damnation. Rumble! The entire Imperial army was attacking the protective mountain array. Fortunately, there were experts in the Burning Sun Hall controlling the array. Otherwise, after a few rounds of attacks, the protective mountain array would have been broken. 1 breath. 2 breaths. 3 breaths. The Imperial army was attacking, while the Burning Sun Hall was defending. Xianxia, who was in the Burning Sun Hall, was already burning with fighting spirit. However, he hoped that the Burning Sun Hall could successfully retreat. As long as all of them entered the secret realm and destroyed the entrance, they would be safe. Although he didn't know where the other entrance to the secret realm was, judging from the expression of the young man with the sword eyebrows, the other entrance wouldn't be easily found by the Imperial family. Perhaps it was in another sacred dynasty. However, looking at the current situation, there didn't seem to be enough time. I didn't expect the Imperial army to arrive so quickly. What a blunder. The young man with the sword eyebrows' eyes flickered. He guessed that the Imperial army must have rushed through the secret realm, which was why they arrived so quickly. If he knew that this would happen, he would have already given the order to retreat. Xianxia, I'll give you one more chance. Hand over the sword-shaped stone and I'll guarantee the safety of the Burning Sun Hall.
The rough man shouted. Xianxia was the name of the Burning Sun Hall's founder. Scram! Unexpectedly, Xianxia roared.
He estimated the strength of the protective mountain array and said, "Elders, prepare for battle." The elders of the Burning Sun Hall had already taken out their weapons. There were more than 40 elders in the Burning Sun Hall. They were all at least 8th Tribulation Supremes. Founder, we can also fight. One of the disciples shouted. The inner disciples of the Burning Sun Hall were almost all 7th Tribulation Supremes. There were also quite a few 8th Tribulation Supremes. They could fight against the experts of the imperial family. We are willing to live and die with the Burning Sun Hall. Yes, live and die together. A group of disciples and deacons shouted one after another. Many of them grew up in the Burning Sun Hall. The Burning Sun Hall was their home. Now that their home was about to be destroyed, they naturally had to stand up and stop it.
All right.
The young man with the sword eyebrows shouted. At the same time, he glanced at the Burning Sun Hall master beside him. Master, the sword-shaped stone has been taken away by junior brother. The Burning Sun Hall master said. His junior brother was the vice hall master of the Burning Sun Hall. Chapter 9:19. The Inferno Sun Hall master nodded. He was already prepared to fight to the death. However, he was still very nervous. After all, the royal army actually sent out 3 9th stage supreme martial artists. On their side, there was only one 9th stage supreme martial artist and him, a 9th stage supreme martial artist. If they fought, they would not have the upper hand. However, if the Jianghu palace could help, the outcome would be different. The people of the Jianghu palace were good at illusions and mental attacks. They could also control flying swords. Their team battle ability was very strong. If they could get their help, they would definitely win this battle. Boom! 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 The strength of the protective array weakened bit by bit. In the Inferno Sun Hall, Xianxia had already secretly taken out the supreme spiritual treasure, Shadowless Sword. He could not provoke the 3 9th stage supreme martial artists, but he could find trouble with the others. With my current realm, bloodline, and Shadowless Sword, killing a 9th stage supreme martial artist is not a problem. Luolua's strength is not bad either. If other people are added, it's not impossible. Xianxia thought in his heart. However, the 3 9th stage supreme martial artists were troublesome. He hoped that Lin Zhantian, as the founder of the sect, could hold them back. Luoluo, don't be too far away from me later. Try to charm as much as you can. If you encounter danger, call me immediately. Xianxia reminded in his mind. Okay. Luoluo nodded. Luoluo had merged with the charm fusion crystal previously, and her charm ability had greatly increased. With her 8th stage supreme martial artist realm, as long as it was not a 9th tribulation supreme martial artist, she would have no problem. At this moment, rumble! A loud sound was heard, and the protective array was finally broken. Kill! Lin Zhantian shouted as he led the charge towards the imperial army. Lin Zhantian, you are seeking your own death. The rough man shouted and led the experts under his command. However, he still formed a team and bypassed Lin Zhantian, directly entering the Inferno Sun Hall to find the entrance to the secret realm. Don't let them in! The Inferno Sun Hall master shouted and led a few people to kill, preparing to intercept this team that wanted to sneak into the secret realm. A great battle began. This was not the first time that Xianxia had participated in such a large-scale battle. Previously, in the Sunflame Sacred Dynasty's Sky Prison, he had weaved through tens of thousands of soldiers. However, he didn't dare to wander around here. After all, he hadn't gone to the Flowing Gold Waterfall to strengthen his sovereign golden body yet. Flowing Shadow Sword. Xianxia summoned his doppelganger. He summoned 6 flying swords and attacked the Extreme King army. At the same time, he kept swinging his shadowless swords to attack the 8 tribulation elites. The two sides had already clashed head-on. Brat, your aptitude is not bad. Go to hell. A peak-level supreme martial artist from the royal family headed straight for Xianxia. Humph. Xianxia snorted coldly and glared at him, casting a burning eye. Luoluo, who was following behind Xianxia, took this opportunity to use her charm. Luoluo's eyes turned pink. Not only that, but that 8th supreme martial artist was also the same. The charm was a success. After the charm was successful, this 8th supreme martial artist took off his interspatial ring and threw it at Xianxia. Then, he turned around and attacked his own people. Bam! A mid-level supreme martial artist's head was cut off before he could react. What are you doing? His actions immediately attracted the attention of others. However, some sharp-eyed people immediately noticed that something was amiss. There's someone from the Foxy clan. Be careful of her charm. Someone warned. Unfortunately, before he could finish his sentence, he heard a whistling wind. Boom!
An explosion suddenly sounded in the air. This talkative consecrator's head was directly smashed by Luoluo's fallen star whip.
Humph, who asked you to be a busybody?
Luoluo snorted unhappily. Those from the Yin Palace cultivated spiritual techniques and had high spiritual resistance. However, the imperial family, like those from the Burning Sun Palace, still cultivated their sovereign golden body. Therefore, Yi Xian and Luoluo's cooperation was flawless. One weakened spiritual power, while the other charmed. They were simply invincible. However, the charm could only easily charm those below the 9th Tribulation Supreme Martial Artist level. It was not a problem for 8th Tribulation Supreme Martial Artists. Therefore, Yi Xian and Luoluo gave up. Luoluo, let's go find the 9th Tribulation Supreme Martial Artist. Yi Xian said to Luoluo in her mind. Okay. Hearing this, Luoluo giggled and followed.
With the eye of perception, Yi Xian could clearly sense that there were more than 29 Tribulation Supreme Martial Artists in the imperial family.
As long as he killed these people, the pressure on the Burning Sun Palace would be reduced. At this time, the 9th Tribulation Supreme Martial Artist targeted by Yi Xian was fighting with an early-stage 9th Tribulation Supreme Martial Artist elder from the Burning Sun Palace. Yi Xian killed more than 10 people along the way. When he got close, he directly slashed with his sword.
Flowing Shadow Sword. With a shadowless sword in hand, his attack power was definitely not something an ordinary 9th Tribulation Supreme Martial Artist could block.
Moreover, it was a sneak attack. Rip! This beam of sword light directly split the opponent's body into 2 halves. What? The elder from the Burning Sun Palace was shocked. An opponent who was on par with him was actually killed in a second? He turned to look and found that the killer was only a mid-stage 8th Tribulation Supreme Martial Artist, Yi Xian. Before he could react, Luoluo hooked the fallen star whip and directly threw the interspatial ring to Yi Xian.
Very good. Next.
Yi Xian was very satisfied.
Even if it was not all of a 9th Tribulation Supreme Martial Artist's wealth, it was comparable to that of 10 peak 8th Tribulation Supreme Martial Artists.
Before the elder could react, Yi Xian went to find the next target. Yi Xian's original body and Luoluo worked together, while his doppelganger was killing the 8th Tribulation Supreme Martial Artists. His original body's cultivation was still increasing. He was destined to shine in this battle. However, he was still unable to control this battle. Yi Xian once again killed a 9th Tribulation Supreme Martial Artist, then turned to scan with the Eye of Revelation. Lin Zhantian was already fighting with the burly man. The former was fighting 1 against 3, but Lin Zhantian's opponents were the imperial family's high officials. 1 against 2 was already his limit. In a 1 against 3 situation, he did not have the strength to fight back. Fortunately, his golden body was strong, otherwise, he would have been defeated. Ancestral Master can't hold on for long. I must weaken the opponent's strength as soon as possible. Yi Xian thought in his heart. However, at this moment, whoosh, 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 a series of air-piercing sounds were heard. Flying swords swept into the crowd and attacked the imperial family's experts. What? The imperial family's experts turned to look and saw the people from the Yin Palace flying towards them.
Old women, you dare?
The burly man shouted. Chapter 920. The Absolute Yin Palace finally made a move. Although the Absolute Yin Palace and the Burning Sun Hall had a grudge against each other, the lady in red would not ignore Lin Zhantian. You old woman, today I will uproot both of your sects.
The rough man turned around and attacked the lady in red.
With 1 less opponent, Lin Zhantian's pressure was reduced by half. Now, he was not afraid of the other party. With the addition of the Absolute Yin Palace, the situation was reversed. The pressure on the experts of the Burning Sun Hall was reduced by a lot. However, there were casualties at the start of the battle, and the experts of the Burning Sun Hall fell one after another. Don't let others take it, Yi Xian reminded in his mind. To him, these were all experience points. Moreover, they were fighting in the air, so his 7 agility advancements were not effective. Otherwise, his killing speed would at least double. Yes. Luoluo nodded. She waved the fallen star whip in her hand. Every time it hit someone, it would destroy their sovereign golden body. If the whip hit the head, unless it was a 9th Tribulation Supremacy, they would definitely die. However, there were not many people who used the whip. Moreover, Luoluo was from the Fox Charm clan, so naturally,
there were people who wanted to attack her. That is a supreme spiritual treasure? A mid-stage ninth tribulation supremacy noticed Luo Luo and immediately rushed over. Supreme spiritual treasure. There was actually a supreme spiritual treasure. This was a huge gain. One had to know that in the entire royal sacred dynasty, there was only one supreme spiritual treasure. Luo Luo, you are being targeted. Yi Xian felt the aura approaching Luo Luo. Come, young master, let's kill him. Luo Luo did not care at all. All right. Yi Xian smiled devilishly. His original body and clone approached at the same time. 3 attacks from 3 directions. Eye of Nirvana. Eye of Nirvana. Demon Fox Flash. 3 flashes of light rushed towards the mid-stage ninth tribulation supremacy. What? He was startled. This speed scared him. Just as he was about to escape, his escape route was blocked. Hiss, hiss. 2 crisp sounds rang out. He dodged one Nirvana Rend, but the other Nirvana Rend and Demon Fox Flash passed him. His entire body was instantly cut into 3 pieces. At the same time, his universe ring was hooked by Luo Luo Luo's fallen star whip and fell into Yi Xian's hand. This person probably didn't expect to die here. He must have brought quite a lot of things with him. Luo 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 oh Luo Luo oh Luo 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 oh Luo Luo oh Luo Luo. If Yi Xian killed the remaining 5, he would definitely be able to make another breakthrough. Luo 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 oh Oi Xian immediately called for Luo Luo, and together with his doppelganger, they rushed towards the nearest ninth tribulation supreme martial artist. Whether it was Yi Xian himself, his doppelganger, or Luo Luo, all of them had the ability to easily kill an early-stage ninth supreme martial artist. If the 3 of them joined forces, even a mid-stage ninth supreme martial artist would have to temporarily avoid them. They killed their way over and killed many people along the way. The Eye of Nirvana consumed too much of his life force. After the previous lesson, Yi Xian didn't dare to casually use his life force to replenish his eye power. Yi Xian and Luo Luo teamed up and targeted another mid-stage supreme martial artist from the imperial family. At this moment, this expert from the royal family was fighting with the first elder of the Burning Sun Hall. The latter was being beaten back repeatedly. Fortunately, there was still a ninth tribulation supreme venerable from the Yin Palace helping. Otherwise, the Burning Sun Hall Grand Elder would have died long ago. Flowing Shadow Sword. Flowing Shadow Sword. Yi Xian immediately joined the battle and launched an attack at the mid-stage supreme martial artist. 2 streaks of cold light pierced through the air, giving the other party a fright. What a powerful attack! This mid-stage supreme martial artist from the imperial family was shocked because the attack launched by Yi Xian's original body was even more powerful than his. Yi Xian's original body wielding the shadowless sword and infusing it with 90% sword intent was enough to break through the opponent's golden sovereign body, and even kill him instantly. Slash. The mid-stage supreme martial artist from the imperial family slashed with his sword with all his might and defeated the attack of Yi Xian's original body. However, the moment he made his move. Swish. Bam! Suddenly, a long silver whip hit his arm. After an explosion, his arm was blown into 2 pieces. Luo Luo, who was wielding the fallen star whip, wasn't any weaker than Yi Xian's clone. However, there was still a gap between her and Yi Xian's original body. Nevertheless, it was enough to threaten the opponent. The imperial family consecrator was shocked when his sword-wielding arm was blown off. His golden sovereign body was extremely powerful, but it was actually blown apart by a mid-stage supreme martial artist little girl. How was this possible? 95% whip intent or a sovereign spiritual treasure. He instantly reacted. In the next moment, he took out another high-grade sovereign divine weapon and charged towards Luo Luo. Hee. Luo Luo chuckled. Her laughter was very innocent. In the next moment, she turned into a ray of light again. The imperial family consecrator was shocked once again. Just as he was about to make a move, the ray of light swept past him and his head was instantly thrown into the air. Demonic Fox Flash. Upon seeing this scene, Yi Xian couldn't help but say in his heart, Luo Luo seems to have used this demonic fox flash for a long time. It shouldn't be a sovereign martial art. It should at least be a transcendent martial art on the same level as a sovereign spiritual treasure. Or perhaps it should be a divine ability. The current him was no longer the inexperienced brat who had just stepped out into the world. The realm above the sovereign stage was called the three minor disasters of the sovereign stage. They were the human body disaster, true energy disaster, and spirit disaster. These three were just minor disasters. After the spirit disaster, there was a great disaster. This great disaster was a shackle, similar to the sovereign tribulation. After the great disaster, the realm was called the manifestation realm. As for the divine ability, it was the name of the manifestation realm, just like the sovereign martial arts of the sovereign stage. After witnessing Luo Luo's strength, Xian guessed that the bloodline in Luo Luo's body was very powerful. It might even surpass the three minor disasters of the sovereign stage. It was at least at the manifestation realm. In fact, Xian could give Luo Luo a bloodline seed, such as the sword god bloodline. However, Luo Luo had a mysterious bloodline that could mutate the beast god bloodline. Therefore, Xian couldn't be sure. What if Luo Luo consumed the sword god bloodline and concealed the mysterious bloodline? Or perhaps, the sword god bloodline would be concealed by the mysterious bloodline and wouldn't have any effect. If that was the case, Xian would have wasted a bloodline seed. Most importantly, Luo Luo didn't want it. Therefore, Xian couldn't force her. After the death of the 9th stage sovereign consecrator, Xian obtained his universe ring and his cultivation improved. Chapter 921. At this moment, 2 of the 5 mid-stage supreme beings had already fallen. Not only that, Xian and his doppelganger had also recovered quite a bit of their eye power. Immediately, they went to find their third target. Along the way, those who blocked their way were all killed by them. Eye of Nirvana. Demon Fox Flash. Flowing Shadow Sword. Xian and Luo Luo once again joined forces to launch a sneak attack. Their target was actually discovered, but they didn't expect the attack to be so powerful, so they were killed in a moment of carelessness. The third mid-stage supreme being had fallen. Luo Luo, you will assist me next. Xian said to Luo Luo. Young master, I can still use Demon Fox Flash twice. Luo Luo suddenly replied. What? Xian was stunned for a moment and said helplessly, You little girl, why didn't you tell me that you improved after breaking through? I forgot. Luo Luo cutely stuck out her tongue. She had already used Demon Fox Flash 3 times, but she could still use it twice, just enough to deal with the remaining 2 mid-stage supreme beings. At this moment, they continued to search for their target. At the same time, Xian handed the invisible sword to his doppelganger, because it was his doppelganger who used Eye of Nirvana. Now it was his turn to use it. The Gemini bloodline was really useful, but it was a pity that the realm of the Gemini bloodline couldn't be shared, so it had to be combined once. If his doppelganger could also increase his doppelganger's level, how good would that be? Eye of Nirvana. Flowing Shadow Sword. Demon Fox Flash. Under the 3 attacks, another mid-stage supreme being from the royal family fell. At this moment, Xian was very close to the peak of the 8th supreme being. As long as he killed the last mid-stage supreme being, this battle would be over. However, Xian's killing of 4 mid-stage supreme being from the royal family fell into the eyes of one person. Not good. We are gradually falling into a disadvantageous position. Yang Chen, go and kill the twins and that fox. The rough man shouted while dealing with the red-clothed woman. The Yang Chen he was talking about was actually one of Lin Zhantian's opponents. Humph, it's not that easy to leave. Lin Zhantian quickly blocked in front of the other party. In a 1 versus 2 situation, he could still handle it. Just now, he had also been paying attention to Xian's side. He didn't expect Xian to be able to kill 4 mid-stage supreme beings in a row. His strength was really explosive. The situation was reversed in an instant. The last mid-stage supreme martial artist was fighting with the palace master of Jianghu Palace. However, Xian and Luo Luo had already approached them. Now, Xian and his doppelganger were unable to use the Eye of Nirvana, but Luo Luo still had 1 more Demon Fox Flash. The 3 of them, together with the palace master of the Jianghu Palace, killed the last middle stage 9th supreme martial artist in an instant. 2 supreme spiritual treasures? The palace master of the Absolute Yin Palace was also shocked. In the entire royal sacred dynasty, there was only 1 supreme spiritual treasure. But now, 2 had appeared at the same time. What was going on? While she was still in shock, Xian had already obtained the last interspatial ring. Ding! The host has broken through. Currently, the
The host is at the peak of the 8th Supreme Martial Artist. When the system notifications sounded, Xian immediately merged with his doppelganger. The palace master of the Absolute Yin Palace felt that his eyes were blurry again. Last time, Xian had split into two in front of him and successfully escaped. This time the two actually merged into one. What was going on? After the merger and the next realm was upgraded, Xian separated again. Since he had broken through, it was more or less time for him to take charge of this battle. Immediately, his original body and doppelganger rushed towards Lin Zhantian. As for Luo, she continued to stay here. At this moment, there was no one who could threaten Luo, so Xian was more at ease. After breaking through, Xian's battle strength had increased tremendously. It was no problem for him to deal with a peak 9th Supreme Martial Artist. As long as he helped Lin Zhantian hold one back, then Lin Zhantian would have no problem dealing with one. Of course, with Xian holding the supreme spiritual treasure, he might be able to kill one of them. In an instant, Xian rushed in front of Yang Chen. Flowing Shadow Sword. Flowing Shadow Sword. Xian's original body and doppelganger attacked at the same time. A peak 9th Supreme Martial Artist was already the top battle strength of the Royal Sacred Dynasty. Although Xian was only a peak 8th Supreme Martial Artist, with a shadowless sword and bloodline in his hand, he could definitely contend with a peak 9th Supreme Martial Artist. He actually has a supreme spiritual treasure. He is mine. Yang Chen suddenly revealed a greedy expression. If he had a supreme spiritual treasure, Lin Zhantian would definitely be beaten up like a dog. Unfortunately, Xian was not so easy to deal with. Boom, boom, boom. With the shadowless sword, Xian's original body's attack power was not something Yang Chen could block, so he could only dodge. Due to the addition of the red-robed woman, Lin Zhantian's pressure was reduced by half. Now that Xian had come to hold another person back, Lin Zhantian's arrogance immediately rose. Dang! Lin Zhantian's entire body seemed to be burning as he directly sent his opponent flying with a punch. The 95% fist intent directly injured his opponent. At that moment, he took advantage of the opportunity to pursue and attack. As long as he could kill a peak 9th Supreme Martial Artist, this battle would be settled. The rough man also swallowed his saliva. He felt that the situation was not good, and cold sweat appeared on his forehead. Originally, 3 peak 9th Supreme Martial Artists, 5 mid-9th Supreme Martial Artists, and more than 10 early 9th Supreme Martial Artists were enough to sweep away any power in the Royal Sacred Dynasty. Unexpectedly, the Yin Palace dared to interfere. Not only that, but 2 super geniuses with supreme spiritual treasures appeared and killed all 5 mid-9th Supreme Martial Artists of the Royal Sacred Dynasty. If this continued, the 3 of them would most likely die here. Go! The rough man was hesitant. However, at this moment, bold thief! Suddenly, an earth-shattering roar fell into everyone's ears. This voice was 10 times louder than the rough man's voice just now. With just 4 words, the group of people below were directly stunned. In an instant, hundreds of figures appeared in the air. Wang! Xian also felt a piercing pain in his eardrums. His entire body was in a daze. Although his battle strength was strong, his realm was still too low. Who exactly was it that made more than half of the people lose their battle strength with just a roar? Xian immediately shook his head and opened his eye of revelation. When he looked up, he saw an old man descending from the sky like a celestial. At this moment, the old man just happened to throw out a palm. This palm was incomparably huge, even bigger than the dragon just now. Its power was definitely not to be underestimated. Not good, Luo. Xian raised his eyebrows and hurriedly recalled Luo back. In the next moment, this huge palm came crashing down. Rumble. Chapter 922. Rumble. As the giant palm fell, the ground cracked. The people in the air felt as though the entire world was trembling. Fortunately, Luo had already been hidden in Xian's storage space, so she was safe. Huff huff, that scared me to death. Xian heaved a sigh of relief. Young master, run. He has already surpassed the Supreme Being realm. Luo's voice rang in Xian's mind. Surpassed the Supreme Being realm. When Xian heard this, he looked at the old man who had killed over 100 people with a single strike. He was completely dumbfounded. Surpassed the Supreme Being realm? Didn't that mean that he had passed the human body disaster? A Supreme Being cultivated the Supreme Being golden body. However, the Supreme Being golden body only meant that his defense was strong. Once a Supreme Being passed the human body disaster, even if it was only the first stage of the human body disaster, his physique would be greatly improved. In comparison, even 10 Lin Zhantians wouldn't be a match for that old man. That old man was comparable to over 1,000,000 mighty soldiers, enough to sweep through the entire royal sacred dynasty. More importantly, that old man was vicious and merciless. That palm strike of his had even killed many of his own people. Insightful eye. Yi Xian hurriedly swept his gaze over and found that those who survived were relatively far away. As long as they were hit by that palm strike, not a single one of them survived. He glanced around and found a familiar figure in the group of dead people. Master. Yi Xian's eyes widened. Han Ming hadn't been able to dodge that palm strike and had his bones shattered. He was already dead. Not only that, even the palace master of the Absolute Yin Palace had died under that palm strike. That was a mid-stage Supreme Being. Bastard! Yi Xian couldn't help but curse. Unexpectedly, that sentence attracted the old man's attention. That old man had clearly just arrived. Otherwise, he would have already attacked Yi Xian. After all, Yi Xian had a Supreme Being spiritual treasure in his hands. Retired Emperor, that brat has a Supreme Being spiritual treasure. The burly man suddenly roared. What? The old man was shocked. Supreme Being spiritual treasure? There was only one Supreme Being spiritual treasure in the entire royal sacred dynasty. Now, another one had appeared. Brat, hand over the supreme spiritual treasure to me, and I'll spare your life. The old man spoke to Yi Xian in a condescending manner. After all, he was the retired emperor of the royal sacred dynasty, a cultivator who had transcended the supremacy plane. In his eyes, supremes were nothing more than ants. However, Yi Xian still had a chance to escape. Brat, I don't like to wait. Since you won't hand it over, I'll take it myself. When this voice sounded out, regardless of whether it was Yi Xian's original body or his clone, they both quickly broke through the void. Although he really wanted to save Lin Zhantian and the others, the old man in front of him was not someone he could fight against. He could only escape. Otherwise, he would have to sacrifice himself. Just as Yi Xian's true body stepped into the void door, the old man rushed down. You want to leave? Dang. The old man used his palm as a saber and slashed out viciously. Xiao! The saber chi also passed through the void door and slashed towards Yi Xian. Fortunately, half of the saber chi was blocked by the void door, but even so, Yi Xian's abdomen was directly penetrated. At this moment, somewhere in the royal sacred dynasty, Yi Xian, who had passed through the void door, spat out a mouthful of blood. If the void door had closed slowly, his heart would have been cut in half. Young master, are you all right? Luo hurriedly asked. Just now, Yi Xian did not have much eye power, but in order to escape the old man's pursuit, he had no choice but to overdraw on his life force. At this moment, both his original body and clone were blind. This was the after effect of overdrawing on his life force. I'm fine, I didn't hurt my heart. Yi Xian heaved a sigh of relief. The void positioning could locate a total of 3 places. One of them was the Burning Sun Hall, while the other 2 were based on the requirements. The place where he was now was just outside the 10,000 Swordsman's secret territory. Who's there? Before Yi Xian could catch his breath, someone shouted. With the eye of perception, Yi Xian could sense a large group of people around him. They were all wearing armor, and it seemed that they were from the imperial family. The imperial family killed my master. This hatred is absolutely irreconcilable. Yi Xian's original body's injuries began to heal. In the next moment, he transformed into a god of death. In just a few breaths' time, this group of 100 people died at the hands of Yi Xian. Among them, there was even a 9th tribulation supremacy. Young master, what should we do now? Luo asked. Yi Xian let Luo out and thought carefully for a moment. Just now, everything was hanging by a thread. If I had left a little later, I'm afraid I would have died there. If the vice palace master of the Burning Sun Hall saw that something was wrong and destroyed the entrance to the secret territory, then they might have had a chance to live. I'm afraid that if the entrance was not destroyed and the sword-shaped stone fell into the hands of the imperial family, no one in the Burning Sun Hall or the Yin Palace would have survived. Yi Xian sighed. The scene from before was still fresh in his mind. If he had not left, there would only have been a few more corpses. He was only a peak 8th supremacy.
Even if he had broken through to 9th supremacy, he was still far from being a match for that old man.
Really, it would have been better if we had just handed over the sword-shaped stone. Why did we have to cause the destruction of our sect?
Luo also did not understand. If they had handed over the sword-shaped stone obediently, they might have been rewarded greatly.
That way, the Burning Sun Hall would not have been destroyed. Not only that, but so many people would not have died. That old man's palm strike killed our master. We have to avenge him. Yi Xian looked at the corpses around him with flickering eyes. Han Ming had died under that old man's giant palm strike. Not only that, but there were also many elders and disciples of the Burning Sun Hall. Since he was a disciple of the Burning Sun Hall, he naturally had to avenge the Burning Sun Hall. Hearing this, Luo was also angry. She finally had a master, but he was killed by a single palm strike.
Immediately, she shouted angrily, "Young master, shall we directly kill our way into the Imperial Palace?"
Imperial Palace? Yi Xian's eyebrows twitched. The Imperial Palace was the most heavily guarded place in the entire country. The imperial capital of the royal sacred dynasty was so deep that it could drown people. However, with their current strength they had the ability to do so. In the entire royal sacred dynasty, only the retired emperor had passed the 3 sovereign disasters. However, this was not a child's play. Yi Xian had to plan carefully. If the entrance to the secret realm that the disciples of the Burning Sun Hall escaped from was destroyed, the retired emperor might not return to the imperial palace. However, if the entrance to the secret realm was discovered and the sword-shaped stone was recovered, the retired emperor would probably take the stone back to the imperial palace. Of course, there were other possibilities. The Burning Sun Hall and the Absolute Yin Palace only had 2 peak 9th supremacies. They were Lin Zhantian and the red-robed lady. As long as the old man found the other entrance to the secret realm, he could send peak 9th supremacies to worship it. There was no need for him to do it personally. Chapter 923. In fact, Yi Xian felt very helpless. If the void lock was located in the imperial capital, then he could directly break through the void lock and travel to the imperial capital. At that time, they would have the upper hand. But now they had to rush for time.
"Young master, then let's go quickly. That old man actually killed master.
I will definitely make him regret it," Luo said angrily. Yi Xian was the same. Why did he become so strong? Wasn't it to protect his family and friends? Although the eastern continent was guarded by old immortal Jianghu, who knew how long he would guard it? If someone stronger than old immortal Jianghu came to the eastern continent, then the eastern continent would be destroyed. Only with strength could one protect their family and friends. "Let's go," Yi Xian said in a low voice, then rushed in a certain direction. He had to race against time. As long as he arrived an hour earlier than the royal sacred dynasty's retired emperor, then the entire imperial palace would be under his control. In order to make things easier, he also sent his clone to other places, which was to plunder the various main cities' city lord mansions. In the royal sacred dynasty's main cities, the city lords were at least 9th tribulation supremes, and each of them had extraordinary wealth. Yi Xian was currently at the peak of the 8th tribulation supremes. If he cooperated with Luo, it wouldn't be a problem for him to control a 9th tribulation supremacy. Moreover, the main body and clone shared the devouring space and the storage space, so Luo could run between them. They immediately set off. The main body rushed to the imperial capital, while the clones started plundering the main cities. This secret realm was actually closer to the Jianghu Palace, but in the previous battle, the Jianghu Palace helped a lot. Otherwise, the Elder Assembly of the Burning Sun Hall would have collapsed in an instant. Yi Xian estimated that the imperial army was already advancing towards the Jianghu Palace. In less than an hour, Yi Xian found a city. Although it wasn't the main cities, it was not bad. The peak of the 8th tribulation supremacy clone directly killed his way in, took control of the city lord, and took a large amount of good things. Then, he rushed to the next location. The whole process only took 3 minutes. Time slowly passed. As time passed, the cultivation of Yi Xian's original body grew stronger and stronger. After all, everything he obtained was devoured by his original body, so his speed naturally increased. Although the imperial family consecrators who came to the Burning Sun Hall were very strong,
They didn't bring many things with them. However, after Yi Xian's doppelganger and Luo Luo worked together to charm the other party immediately handed over all their wealth. Therefore, in less than half a day, Yi Xian's gains had already surpassed the gains from that battle. One day later. Ding! Host has met the requirements to transcend the tribulation. The current success rate is 95%. Do you wish to transcend the tribulation? When Yi Xian heard the notification, he did not answer immediately. Instead, he let his clone use the eyes of the void. Young master, can you transcend the tribulation? Luo Luo also passed through the void door and arrived beside Yi Xian's true body. Yes. Yi Xian nodded and merged with his clone. Ding! The current success rate of tribulation is 100%. Do you wish to undergo tribulation? Yes. After merging with his clone, his strength increased by 10%. The success rate of transcending the tribulation was directly over 100%. At this moment, the place where he was transcending the tribulation was only half a day's journey away from the imperial capital. Above Yi Xian's head, the 9th level tribulation began to condense. This was already the last level of the supremacy tribulation. As long as he transcended this level of tribulation, his strength would increase tremendously. At that time, no one below the 3 sovereign disasters would be a match for him. Rumble! The supremacy tribulation lightning struck down. Yi Xian just stood there quietly, accepting the baptism of the supremacy tribulation lightning. Rumble! The second supremacy tribulation lightning struck down. The first half of the 9th level tribulation lightning was child's play. However, the second half of the tribulation lightning was stronger than the previous one. Since the founding of the royal sacred dynasty, countless people had died under the 9th level tribulation lightning. At least 10,000 people had died. And those who succeeded in transcending the tribulation were estimated to be less than 1%. However, the 9th level tribulation lightning was child's play to Yi Xian. Rumble! 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 Another 3 supremacy tribulations struck down. At this moment, Yi Xian had already endured 5 supremacy tribulation lightning. However, at this moment, he suddenly felt several powerful auras. Luo Luo, there are people. Yi Xian reminded her. To be able to attract young master's attention, their strength is definitely not simple. I will go and rob them. Luo Luo laughed lightly and prepared to follow Yi Xian's gaze. No need, let them come over themselves. Yi Xian just stood there quietly. All right, but I think it's another group of people who want to take advantage of the situation. Luo Luo had a look as if she had already seen through it. In the wild, when meeting someone undergoing tribulation, under normal circumstances, one would go and take a look. After all, undergoing tribulation was not a small matter. Many people would take advantage of the situation and attack the other party. If one was careless and the other party was struck to death by the tribulation lightning, then they would have profited. At this moment, within the range of Yi Xian's senses, several 9th tribulation supremacies were rushing towards him. One of them was even a mid-stage 9th tribulation supremacy. However, Yi Xian and Luo Luo did not care at all. Not only Yi Xian, but even Luo Luo's strength was not ordinary. A mid-stage 9th tribulation supremacy was just a matter of a few whips to Luo Luo. Soon those people rushed over. How strange, undergoing tribulation on a plane. How audacious. A burly man looked at them with a mocking expression. Yi Xian looked at them coldly. There were a total of 5 people, 4 early-stage 9th tribulation supremacies, and 1 mid-stage 9th tribulation supremacy. Their strength was not ordinary. They were probably from some large faction in the imperial capital, or they belonged to the imperial family. Big brother, there's also a little girl from the Fox clan. She's so pretty and looks like a virgin. She's also a mid-stage 8th tribulation supremacy. If we give her to the imperial family, we'll definitely get a good price. A small-eyed man came forward and smiled vulgarly at the burly man. Yi Xian was a peak 8th tribulation supremacy, and Luo Luo was a mid-stage 8th tribulation supremacy. Although they were only a step away from the peak 8th tribulation supremacy, they would probably be able to break through to the peak 8th tribulation supremacy by the time they entered the imperial capital. However, this strength was really not worth mentioning for the 5 people in front of them. The burly man couldn't help but narrow his eyes. Little brother, didn't your clan elders tell you that you have to find a hidden place to undergo tribulation? Ha ha. Hearing this,
Yi Xian grinned and said, "I've never chosen a place to undergo tribulation. It doesn't matter even if it's a mountain of blades or a sea of flames." Chapter 924. However, the moment he said that, the other party laughed out loud. "What shameless boasting. Kid, do you have any last words?" the small-eyed man asked.
"No last words, as long as you have the ability to kill me."
Yi Xian smiled and didn't want to waste any more words.
He directly said to Luo Luo, "Kill the other four.
Charm the mid-stage supreme being." "Yes, young master." Luo Luo immediately took out her fallen star whip and attacked instantly. Yi Xian originally wanted to continue talking nonsense, but he suddenly remembered that he was in a race against time. It was better to end this quickly. Whoosh whoosh. Luo Luo's whip was very fast.
It directly hit the small-eyed man's head.
Bang!
With a loud explosion, the small-eyed man's head exploded.
The other four people were stunned. They saw that Luo Luo was only a mid-stage supreme being, so they didn't move. However, they didn't expect her attack to be so powerful.
One whip was enough to kill one of their companions.
That's a supreme being's spiritual treasure. Kill. The leader of the brawny men immediately reacted.
However, before they could attack, Yi Xian, who was in the middle of his tribulation, quickly slashed 3 times with his sword.
Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. 3 sounds broke through the air. The remaining 3 early-stage supreme beings were all killed. At the same time, Yi Xian also used the burning eye on the mid-stage supreme being brawny man. Taking advantage of this opportunity, Luo Luo quickly used her charm. Although there was a difference of 3 realms, the charm fusion crystal greatly increased Luo Luo's charm ability. Even if she couldn't succeed, she could still weaken the opponent by a large amount. Eye of control. Ding! Control successful. When the system notification sounded, the brawny man was subdued by Yi Xian and became Yi Xian's servant. "Who are you?" Yi Xian asked. "I'm Xie Shan from the imperial capital Xie family." The brawny man began to introduce himself. From their conversation just now, Yi Xian knew that he wasn't from the imperial family. However, when Yi Xian heard the brawny man's words, he was also surprised. This strong man's younger sister was actually the crown princess. The crown princess was the crown prince's official wife. If the crown prince was not deposed, she would be the empress in the future. As long as his sister became the empress, he would be the imperial uncle. Yi Xian didn't expect to meet someone of such status. He immediately asked, "Do you know if the retired emperor of the royal sacred dynasty is in the imperial capital?" "I don't know." Xie Shan shook his head. It had only been a day and a half since the incident at the Burning Sun Hall.
If the retired emperor had not obtained the sword-shaped stone, he would not have returned.
However, if he had obtained it, he would most likely have returned to the imperial capital. Therefore, Yi Xian might need Xie Shan to inquire about some matters. Immediately, Yi Xian collected all the items in their interspatial rings. Boom! At the same time, the 9th bolt of tribulation lightning struck down. Ding! The host has successfully transcended the tribulation. He is now an early-stage 9th tribulation supreme venerable. By the time the system notification rang out, Yi Xian's physique and true energy had undergone a tremendous change. Now, he was almost invincible among the supreme beings. Then, he led Xie Shan and continued on their journey. There was still half a day's journey to the imperial capital. However, Yi Xian's speed was much faster after his breakthrough. He estimated that he would only need 3 hours to reach the imperial capital.
Although he had the sword-shaped stone in his body, with his current strength, 90% sword intent and 95% sword intent did not matter.
His strength was between the supreme being and the 3 sovereign disasters. With the sovereign spiritual treasure, he could easily kill a mid-9th supreme being with a single strike. Even a peak 9th supreme being would not be able to block it. The weaker ones would be killed instantly. However, if he were to face that palm strike, he was still too weak.
Unless he broke through to the mid-9th supreme being or peak supreme being, he might be able to defeat that palm strike with his shadowless sword and bloodline.
Yi Xian continued his journey. His clone also broke through the void and left the imperial capital, continuing to plunder the main city. 3 hours later, they arrived at the imperial capital. "Xie Shan, go and see if the imperial capital has issued a warrant for us," Yi Xian ordered.
"Yes, master." Xianxia nodded and immediately rushed to the imperial capital's gate. He was the crown princess's brother, so he could be considered a relative of the imperial family. Naturally, the city guard recognized him. Soon, he returned. "How is it?" Yixian asked. "Master, you are not wanted. The retired emperor has not returned yet," Xianxia replied respectfully. "Not wanted?" That was good. However, the city guard might not know whether the retired emperor had returned or not. Perhaps the retired emperor had already returned, but he did not know. After all, the retired emperor was an expert who had surpassed the supreme being level. Since they were not wanted, they could easily enter the city. Moreover, with Xianxia around, even if they were wanted, it would be fine. Yixian followed Xianxia into the city. Since Luo was from the Fox Charm clan, Yixian directly hid her in his storage space. "Young master, what should we do now?" Luo asked in Yixian's mind. "Just go." Although they had already arrived at the imperial capital, Yixian did not choose to go to the imperial capital just to be safe. The auction house in the imperial capital was jointly established by the 4 great clans of the imperial capital. Yixian went to the auction house first because he wanted to see if there was anything he needed. However, just as Yixian was rushing to the auction house, Xianxia suddenly slapped his head and said, "Master, I remember. One of the things you want has been auctioned before." "What?" Hearing this, Yixian was shocked. "It's the heartbreak fruit. It was auctioned at the imperial capital's auction house a month ago, but I forgot who bought it," Xianxia said hurriedly. The heartbreak fruit was a must for Yixian to open a third eye. "It's the heartbreak fruit?" "It's the thing to open the eye of decomposition." Yixian's eyes widened and said, "Hurry, hurry!" He had already opened a lot of third eyes, and every one of them was very useful. Every time he opened a third eye, his strength would increase. After hearing this news, Yixian hurriedly asked Xianxia to bring him to the imperial capital's auction house. Using his identity, Xianxia directly called the auction house manager over. There were a total of 4 auction house managers in the imperial capital. The one Xianxia called over was his second brother, Xiahai. Xiahai was the same as Xianxia, a mid-stage 9th supreme being. "Third brother, didn't you go to Mount Chonghen to deal with that 9th rank supreme being sacred beast? Why are you back so soon?" After seeing Xianxia, Xiahai asked in surprise. Then, his gaze fell on Yixian. "This little brother is..." Yixian did not waste any time and directly released Luo. Burning Eye. Charm. Eye of Control. Chapter 925. Who bought the heartbreak fruit a month ago? Yixian asked directly. Xiahai paused for a moment, as if trying to recall something. The heartbreak fruit was rare, but its price wasn't very high, so he didn't pay much attention to it. After a while he replied, "I think it was the crown prince." "The crown prince?" Yixian and Luo looked at each other, then at Xianxia. Wasn't Xianxia and Xiahai's sister the crown prince's wife? "Okay, I understand." Yixian nodded. The crown prince had bought the heartbreak fruit a month ago. If the crown prince used it, it would be a tragedy. "You guys, go to the treasury and bring everything to me," Yixian ordered again. He didn't come to the auction house just for the items needed to open his heaven's eye, but also for the huge amount of wealth. This is an important treasury. It requires 4 people to open it together," Xiahai replied. "Then call the other 3 people one by one." Yixian continued. "Yes." Xiahai nodded and left. He didn't dare to disobey Yixian's orders. The 4 great clans of the imperial capital were the Xie, Chen, Lin, and Yuan clans. Soon, Xiahai called the Chen clan's manager over. Without a doubt, the manager was also under Yixian's control, followed by the Lin and Yuan clans. Now that the managers of the 4 great clans were under Yixian's control, Yixian could enter the auction house's treasury. This time, Yixian wouldn't be merciful. He directly emptied the treasury, leaving nothing behind. This treasure trove was worth at least 10 main cities. Moreover, this wasn't referring to the 10 main cities, but the value of the entire main city. "Young master, give me 1 more day and I will be able to pass my tribulation." Luo was in a good mood after obtaining a large amount of heavenly treasures. Although she was only at the mid-8th stage of the Supreme Being realm, she was about to reach the peak. With these heavenly treasures, She was confident that she could break through to the ninth tribulation supreme being realm in one day. As for the rest, they were all swallowed up by Yi Xian. The combined wealth of the four great clans is probably even more than this auction house. However, the four great clans all have ninth great martial saint realm experts. Although they can kill the other party in an instant under the circumstances of a sneak attack, once they are discovered, they will only alert the enemy.
Yi Xian thought.
If the Emperor Emeritus wasn't in the imperial capital, it wouldn't matter. After all, he was invincible among the supreme beings. After thinking for a while, Yi Xian decided to take a gamble. And his decision was to kill all the 9th supreme martial artists of the 4 great clans and gather all the wealth. It happened to be the middle of the night, so it was convenient for him to do things. Xie Shan, Xie Hai, take me to the Xie clan.
Yes.
Xie Hai and Xie Shan looked at each other. The Xie clan was one of the 4 great clans in the imperial capital. Although Xie Tian was only a mid-9th stage supreme being, their father Xie Xian was a peak 9th stage supreme being. Before going to find Xie Xian, Yi Xian wanted to control the Xie clan's patriarch, Xie Tian. Soon, he followed Xie Hai and Xie Shan to the Xie clan and found Xie Tian.
Second brother. There's an auction tomorrow. Why are you back?
Third brother. Didn't you go to Mount Chonghen? When Xie Tian saw the two of them, he was also very surprised. However, before Xie Shan and the other two could speak, Yi Xian directly released Luo Luo.
Burning Eye. Charm. Eye of Control.
Yi Xian took control of the Xie clan's patriarch, Xie Tian. Do you have the authority to access the Xie clan's treasury?
Yi Xian asked. Yes.
Xie Tian nodded.
Yi Xian's eyes lit up.
He thought that only the Xie clan's patriarch, Xie Xian, could access the Xie clan's treasury. Since Xie Tian had the authority, he would save the trouble and avoid alerting the enemy.
Okay, take me there.
I want all the Xie clan's wealth.
Yi Xian didn't hold back.
Xie Tian didn't dare to disobey. He led Yi Xian and the others to the Xie clan's treasury. Every power had a place to store their wealth. They couldn't put everything on one person. These things had to be put in a safe place. Even Xie Hai and Xie Shan didn't know about the Xie clan's treasury. Only the patriarch of each generation knew about it. Yi Xian and Luo Luo arrived at the Xie clan's treasury under Xie Tian's lead. After Xie Tian handed all the Xie clan's treasures to Yi Xian, Yi Xian was shocked. The treasures in the Xie clan's treasury were almost comparable to the entire auction's treasury.
Very good.
Yi Xian nodded satisfactorily. Next, he used the same method to control the patriarchs of the other 3 clans and obtain their treasures. His actions were stealthily done. After he plundered the 4 great clans, he finally heard a system notification.
Ding! The host has broken through.
The host is now a mid-stage 9th tribulation supreme martial artist. Luo Luo, who was beside him, felt Yi Xian's aura suddenly skyrocketing. She smiled and said, "Congratulations on breaking through, young master. It's not enough. With my current strength, I still can't fight against the retired emperor."
Yi Xian shook his head.
He knew his limits. Even with his current strength, he couldn't block the attack just now. Although he wouldn't be killed instantly, he would at least be seriously injured. Therefore, he still couldn't fight against the retired emperor. However, if he broke through to the peak of the 9th tribulation supreme martial artist and activated the disintegration eye, he might be able to. Now that I've broken through to the mid-stage 9th tribulation supreme martial artist, no one can stop me even if I kill my way into the imperial city. However, I can't guarantee that the old man hasn't returned yet.
Yi Xian thought to himself.
Young master, what should we do with these people?
Luo Luo asked.
These 4 great clans are all relatives of the emperor. They all have people in the imperial palace. Moreover, they have done many shady things in secret. Kill them all and leave one alive.
Yi Xian's expression turned cold.
He controlled the top echelons of the 4 great clans, so their secrets naturally couldn't escape his interrogation. The patriarchs of the 4 great clans had the blood of countless innocent people on their hands. Therefore, it didn't matter if they were killed. Yi Xian had no qualms about killing them. In less than half an hour, the 4 great clans' patriarchs and 4 shopkeepers were all killed by Yi Xian.
Only Xie Shan was left.
Now, bring me into the imperial city and find the crown prince.
Yi Xian said to Xie Shan.
Yes, master. Although his own brothers had been killed by Yi Xian, he still didn't dare to betray Yi Xian. This was the strength of the Eye of Control. Apart from the limited number of eyes, the Eye of Control was stronger than Luoluo's charm in every aspect.
Chapter 926. Bewitchment required the use of spiritual energy, but the Eye of Control didn't. Furthermore, the bewitched could be easily seen through by others, and in certain circumstances, the bewitched could break free from the bewitchment. If Xieshan's master was Luoluo, and he was bewitched by Luoluo, and Luoluo ordered Xieshan to personally kill his brothers, Xieshan would hesitate. This meant that Xieshan could break free from the bewitchment on his own and regain his freedom. With the Eye of Control, Xieshan wouldn't hesitate, and wouldn't betray Yi Xian. Of course, breaking free from the bewitchment on one's own usually happened when one's emotions fluctuated greatly. When one's emotions fluctuated greatly, one's spiritual energy would suddenly increase. However, as long as the master's spiritual energy was strong enough, the bewitched wouldn't be able to break free even if they killed their entire family. Xieshan brought Yi Xian alone to the imperial city.
It was already late at night, and the number of guards in the imperial city at night was twice as many as in the day.
"Who are you?" When Xieshan approached the gates of the imperial city, he was stopped by a general.
"It's me."
Xieshan walked over and revealed his identity.
"So it's Duke Xie."
The general immediately recognized Xieshan. At this time his gaze landed on Yi Xian, and he said, "He's my younger cousin.
I'm here to look for my younger sister."
Xieshan directly replied, "Oh, Duke Xie, please."
The general didn't doubt him at all and directly shouted, "Let him in."
Xieshan was considered a top figure in the imperial city, and he frequently entered the imperial city through his connections. He had a good relationship with the crown prince, so even if he brought a group of people in, nothing would happen. With him around, Yi Xian successfully infiltrated the imperial city. After that, Xieshan brought Yi Xian to look for the crown prince. There were more than 10 princes in the imperial sacred dynasty, but the one who became the crown prince in the end was the 13th prince, who was only 22 years old. This crown prince was younger than Yi Xian, but his realm was exactly the same as Yi Xian's. They were both mid-stage supreme being. However, when Yi Xian was an early-stage supreme being, he could easily control Xieshan and the others. Now that he had broken through to mid-stage supreme being, even a peak supreme being wouldn't be able to escape his clutches. At the same level, Yi Xian didn't need Luoluo. "Young master, I've broken through. I think I'll be able to undergo tribulation tomorrow." When Xieshan brought Yi Xian to the crown prince, Luoluo's bell-like voice rang in Yi Xian's mind. As an Yi Xian artifact, Luoluo could still cultivate in the artifact space. All right. Yi Xian's eyes flickered. If Luoluo was allowed to break through to the 9th Tribulation Supreme level, she would be an invincible existence among the Supreme level experts. However, if she wanted to contend against the retired emperor, she would probably have to use that tuft of golden hair. After a while, Xieshan led Yi Xian to the crown prince's sleeping quarters. "We want to see the crown prince," Xieshan said to a general outside the crown prince's chamber. "All right, please wait a moment, Duke Xie." The general nodded and immediately entered the crown prince's chambers. At the same time, Yi Xian used his Eye of Revelation to scan the area. The crown prince's chambers were very large and there were many people living here. However, Yi Xian also had the Eye of Perception. Together with the Eye of Revelation, he quickly found the crown prince, who was in the middle stage of the supreme being supreme level. At this moment, the crown prince was in the middle of a piston movement. It was unknown whether the person under him was Xieshan's sister or another concubine. Soon the general found the crown prince. However, the crown prince was in the middle of something. Naturally, the crown prince was furious when the general suddenly disturbed him. The general, who was refused entry, ran out with a gloomy face and said, "The crown prince said he won't see you. He has to see him even if he doesn't want to," Yi Xian said in his heart. His eyes flashed and the general's face suddenly turned ferocious. In the next moment, he looked at Yi Xian very respectfully. "This way, please." The general, who was in the middle stage of the supreme being supreme level, suddenly stepped aside. The surrounding imperial guards were shocked. Didn't the crown prince say he wouldn't see him? Why did the general change his mind? However, they didn't dare to ask. Yi Xian forcibly took control of the general and entered the crown prince's palace. Then, under the general's lead,
They found the Crown Prince's residence again.
Damn it! Didn't I say I won't see you?
The Crown Prince, who was in a small palace, was furious. He directly jumped down from his bed without even putting on his clothes. However, at this moment, boom! The palace's door was suddenly forced open. The Crown Prince was stunned. He was about to say, "How dare you barge in?" However, when he saw the person who had entered the palace first, he couldn't help but be stunned.
Who are you?
The Crown Prince immediately released his vital energy because he felt that Xianxia's cultivation level was not lower than his.
Could he be an assassin?
Just as he finished speaking, he happened to see the general and Xianxia close the door of the palace, one on the left and one on the right. Who I am is not important.
Xian didn't want to waste time with him. His eyes flashed. The burning eye. The eye of control.
In the next moment, the Crown Prince of the royal sacred dynasty became Xian's servant.
Greetings, master.
The Crown Prince, who was naked, knelt down on one knee. Behind him, the concubine lying on the bed had a very interesting expression.
She didn't even have time to cover her body. She just watched.
The Crown Prince of the royal sacred dynasty actually knelt in front of a young man and called him master.
She couldn't understand this.
Could it be? After being dazed for a moment, the concubine's eyes lit up. She hurriedly got off the bed and ran naked to the Crown Prince's side.
Greetings, Lord Emissary. The concubine hurriedly shouted.
Her face was flushed and her hair was a little messy. However, she didn't dare to touch it because she saw that Xian's expression was very serious. Just now, Xian had rushed in with an aggressive aura. Someone who dared to do this in the palace definitely came from that place. Xian glanced at the concubine and was slightly surprised. This concubine's skin was white and her figure was hot. Such a great beauty was kneeling in front of him naked. This was the first time this had happened. As long as it was a man, he wouldn't be able to remain calm. Young master, I feel that your heart is beating faster.
What's wrong with you? Quickly let me out.
Luo felt that something was wrong with Xian and hurriedly said,
It's nothing. Just stay here.
Xian was sweating and hurriedly comforted her. If Luo saw the naked Crown Prince, she would probably beat him to death.
Eye of control.
This concubine's strength wasn't strong. She was only in the 8th stage of the Supreme Being realm. She was easily controlled by Xian. Put on your clothes and wait at the side.
Xian said to the concubine.
Yes.
The concubine nodded.
She took out a cloak from her spatial ring and put it on before walking to the side. The Crown Prince also stood up and put on his clothes. Do you still have the heartbreak fruit you bought at the auction?
Xian asked directly.
Yes. The Crown Prince nodded. Chapter 927. The Crown Prince immediately took out the heartbreak fruit from his interspatial ring and handed it to Xian. The moment Xian took the heartbreak fruit, his hand couldn't help but tremble. Ding! The Eye of Dissection has been successfully activated. A system notification rang out. The Eye of Dissection was a very unique heavenly eye. It could dissect an opponent's attacks, weapons, and even the opponent's body. This Eye of Dissection looks very powerful. The amount of eye power it consumes is probably not to be underestimated. Xian decided to give it a try. He immediately turned his head and looked at the big mouth where the Crown Prince and his concubine had fought for 300 rounds.
Eye of Dissection.
2 invisible rays shot out from Xian's eyes and hit the big mouth. In the next moment, the big mouth began to rapidly disintegrate into ashes.
So powerful.
And the amount of eye power it consumes is much less than the Eye of the Void. Xian was overjoyed.
Young master, I want to see it too.
Luo shouted in his mind.
All right.
Xian let Luo out and then took out an upper-grade sovereign weapon.
Eye of Dissection.
The 2 invisible rays hit the upper-grade sovereign weapon. In the next moment, the upper-grade sovereign weapon began to disintegrate, and in less than a second, it turned into ashes. It seemed that the speed of disintegration was related to the strength of the object being disintegrated. Wow, even an upper-grade sovereign weapon was disintegrated.
So powerful.
Luo's eyes widened. A upper-grade sovereign weapon was stronger than a 9th Tribulation Supremacy's golden sovereign body. However, Xian disintegrated it in a second. It was really terrifying. The Crown Prince and his concubine were also dumbfounded and hurriedly swallowed their saliva. Although the two disintegration rays were invisible to the naked eye, they could feel that if they hit a person, even a ninth tribulation supremacy would die. Now, Yi Xian had the confidence to contend with the retired emperor of the royal sacred dynasty. After all, he still had a chance to advance. Of course, this was only what he thought. To be safe, it was best to advance to the peak of the ninth tribulation supremacy. Very good. Yi Xian nodded in satisfaction. Then, he took the crown prince's and the concubine's universe rings and took everything away.
Let me ask you, is your grandfather in the imperial city?
Yi Xian asked.
He seems to have gone out. I don't know when he'll be back.
The crown prince shook his head.
Yi Xian felt a little helpless.
After all, that old man was the retired emperor. Even if he returned, he couldn't report to the crown prince. At this moment, Yi Xian's gaze landed on the concubine again. He asked, "Why did you call me Lord Messenger just now?" He found it very strange because most people would be at a loss when they saw the scene just now. However, this concubine seemed to have thought of something.
She didn't even wear clothes and ran over naked to kneel. Clearly, there was something fishy.
I thought Master came from that place," the concubine said with a red face.
Where?
Yi Xian raised an eyebrow.
Master, she thinks you're from the Holy Land.
The crown prince suddenly said.
Holy Land. This was the first time Yi Xian had heard of this term.
However, he could guess that this Holy Land was definitely more powerful than the royal sacred dynasty.
What kind of place is the Holy Land? Tell me in detail.
Yi Xian asked again.
The Holy Land is a secret realm. My Blood Cliff continent is a continent under the Blood Cliff sect. At the same time, our Blood Cliff continent isn't the only one.
There are many other continents.
Simply put, the Blood Cliff continent is a place to send geniuses to the Holy Land.
The crown prince explained.
What? There's more than one Blood Cliff continent. Yi Xian was shocked.
Not only that, even Lua was shocked.
That's right.
Our Blood Granite continent is the smallest, so the Holy Land sent Manifestation Realm experts to begin pushing the islands around the Blood Granite continent and merging them together. As a result, our current Blood Granite continent is growing larger and larger. The crown prince nodded.
Wanxiang Realm, merging the islands with the Blood Cliff continent? Yi Xian raised an eyebrow.
Above the Supreme Being was the three minor disasters of the Supreme Being realm, and above that was the Wanxiang Realm. He didn't expect that after reaching the Wanxiang Realm, he could actually move islands.
It was too terrifying. At that moment, Yi Xian suddenly thought of Earth. The Blood Cliff continent under his feet was like Asia.
The Wanxiang Realm experts thought that Asia was too small, so they merged the surrounding islands into Asia. Of course, although the 7 continents on Earth weren't connected, they were all called the Blood Cliff continent. For example, they were responsible for sending geniuses to the Blood Cliff sect.
How can one enter the Blood Cliff sect?
Yi Xian asked again.
Only those who meet the entry requirements can enter the Holy Land.
Of course, if you obtain the Blood Cliff scattered around the Blood Cliff continent, you can also exchange it for a spot to enter the Holy Land. The crown prince replied. Blood Cliff, huh? Yi Xian narrowed his eyes.
Suddenly, Yi Xian thought of the Yin-Yang Patriarch.
That Yin-Yang Patriarch should be from the Holy Land. Then what are the entry requirements of the Blood Cliff sect?
Yi Xian continued to ask.
Reach the peak of the Supreme Being 9th level at the age of 20, the crown prince answered without thinking. F***CK.
Hearing this, Yi Xian fainted.
He was already 24 years old, but he was only in the middle of the Supreme Being 9th level.
Perhaps, only Luo had this qualification. How many sects are there in the Holy Land?
What level of power is the Blood Cliff sect in the Holy Land? Yi Xian asked again. Many, probably more than the countries on the Blood Cliff continent. Every power has many continents under their control, and the Blood Cliff sect is considered the lowest level. The crown prince replied. There are more powers in the Holy Land than countries, and the Blood Cliff sect is only the lowest level. Yi Xian was so shocked that he prostrated himself on the ground. He estimated that any random sect in the Holy Land would be able to sweep across the Blood Cliff continent. After all, the entry requirement for the Blood Cliff sect was to reach the peak of the Supreme Being 9th level before the age of 20.
Then, do you have any Blood Cliff sect in the Royal Sacred Dynasty? Yi Xian continued to ask.
Since they couldn't reach the entry requirements, They could only rely on the Bloodcliff sect to enter the Holy Land. There is one. My imperial grandfather paid a huge price to privately exchange for it from the Holy Land's emissary. The Crown Prince nodded.
Really?
Hearing this, Yi Xian revealed an overjoyed expression. Luo breaking through to the peak of the Supreme Being 9th level before the age of 20 was a certainty. Moreover, she didn't even need to wait until the age of 20. She would be able to do it after a period of time. Therefore, it wasn't a big problem for her to enter the Bloodcliff sect. However, Yi Xian wouldn't be able to do it unless he broke through the 3 lesser disasters of the Supreme Being level. At this time, Yi Xian thought of another question and asked, "If you want to use the Bloodcliff sect, who will you send in?" "My imperial grandfather will go in by himself," the Crown Prince replied.
So selfish. Luo couldn't help but ridicule. Chapter 928.
Wait, your imperial grandfather exchanged for the Blood Rock. Does that mean there isn't much left in the national treasury? Yi Xian's heart skipped a beat, almost stopping.
Yes.
The Crown Prince nodded. F*CKU #Yens%@B. Yi Xian couldn't help but curse. He originally wanted to control the emperor of the royal sacred dynasty and empty the national treasury. He didn't expect the national treasury to be empty. However, Yi Xian calmed down when he thought about how the retired emperor used half of the national treasury to exchange for the Blood Rock. That Yang old ancestor is definitely in the Holy Lands. If I want to find the Judgment Scripture and Judgment Scripture, I have to enter the Holy Lands. Therefore, this Blood Rock must be exchanged. Yi Xian thought to himself. Although there wasn't much left in the national treasury, Yi Xian still had to make a trip there. He immediately asked the Crown Prince to lead the way to his father. The emperor of the royal sacred dynasty was the ruler of a country. Naturally, his strength couldn't be too low. That was why he was at the peak of the 9th level Supreme Being. However, this wasn't worth mentioning to Yi Xian. Under the Crown Prince's lead, Yi Xian arrived at the emperor's palace. "Your Highness, the emperor has already gone to bed." A peak 9th level Supreme Being expert stopped the Crown Prince. "It's only 9 at night and you're already asleep. Didn't you say that you have a lot of things to attend to every day? Is this still the emperor?" Yi Xian glared at him. The peak 9th level Supreme Being expert frowned. In the next second, he was controlled by Yi Xian. "Your Highness, please follow me." The expert led Yi Xian and the Crown Prince into the palace. Because this was the imperial city, Yi Xian didn't dare to make a move. With the eye of revelation, he could see that there were many experts guarding the palace. Once he made a move, he would be exposed. Right, how many peak 9th level Supreme Being experts are there in the imperial family? After entering the emperor's palace, Yi Xian couldn't help but ask. "Including my imperial father, there are 10. The Crown Prince replied. Out of 10 peak 9th level Supreme Being experts, 3 were dispatched to destroy the Burning Sun Hall. Even the retired emperor personally came was enough to prove the value of the rock. Soon, Yi Xian arrived at the emperor's residence. "Father, something bad has happened." The Crown Prince shouted anxiously outside the palace. After a while, the palace door opened, and a middle-aged man with a goatee walked out. "What happened?" the emperor said in surprise when he saw the Crown Prince standing outside the door. At this moment, Yi Xian had already released Luo. As soon as the emperor finished speaking, the two of them had already started fighting.
Burning Eye. Charm. Eye of Control.
These 3 moves were enough to control a person at the peak of the Supreme Martial Artist level 9. However, what surprised Yi Xian was that the emperor actually resisted the first Eye of Control. "Not good, there are thorns," the emperor immediately spoke. But at this moment, Yi Xian hurriedly used the second round. Ding! Control successful. When the notification sounded, Yi Xian quickly rushed in again because there was another woman inside. She should be the Empress. The Empress was only at the peak of the Supreme Martial Artist level, so she was easily controlled by Yi Xian. Has the retired emperor returned? Yi Xian still asked the same question. No. He went to destroy the Burning Sun Hall and hasn't returned yet. The emperor shook his head. Yi Xian heaved a sigh of relief and said, "Bring me to the imperial treasury."
Yes.
The emperor replied. He immediately put on his clothes and brought Yi Xian to the imperial treasury.
A high-grade Holy Dynasty's imperial treasury was enough to make anyone go crazy. However, at this moment, the Imperial Sacred Dynasty's imperial treasury didn't have much left. It was barely enough to run the entire dynasty. If another Holy Dynasty attacked, the Imperial Sacred Dynasty might not have enough funds to fight. However, if the retired emperor entered the Bloodrock sect, the Imperial Sacred Dynasty would naturally rise in power. The other high-grade Holy Dynasties wouldn't dare to start a war. Sigh, I can't break through to the peak of the Supreme Martial Artist level. If I hadn't exchanged for that Bloodrock, I would have been able to. Yi Xian was slightly helpless. The current him didn't have the confidence to fight the retired emperor. At the same time, he didn't know what happened to the people from the Burning Sun Hall. No matter what, this enmity must be avenged. Yi Xian's eyes flickered, filled with killing intent. That night, the imperial palace seemed to be peaceful, but in reality, a huge change had happened. In order to destroy the Burning Sun Hall, the emperor sent 3 peak 9th venerables. Therefore, including the emperor, there were 7 peak 9th venerables in the imperial palace. The emperor was also among the 7, and they were all secretly controlled by Yi Xian. As for the others, they were all charmed by Luo Luo. Now, they just had to wait for the retired emperor to return. That night, Yi Xian hid by the crown prince's side. If the retired emperor returned, the emperor would immediately send someone to inform him. At noon the next day, Luo Luo began to undergo her tribulation. 9th level supremacy tribulation. It wasn't a rare thing to undergo tribulation in the imperial palace. Everyone thought that it was the crown prince's subordinate who was undergoing tribulation. Luo Luo had full confidence in this 9th level supremacy tribulation. After 9 consecutive tribulations, Luo Luo broke through to the 9th level supremacy tribulation. After Luo Luo broke through to the 9th level supremacy tribulation, Yi Xian's confidence increased greatly. With Luo Luo's current level, she was invincible among the supremacies even if she didn't use the Fallen Star Whip. If she used the Fallen Star Whip and assisted Yi Xian, the two of them should be able to fight the retired emperor.
Old man, we've been waiting for your return.
Yi Xian narrowed his eyes, not bothering to hide the killing intent in them. However, it was really a coincidence that not long after Luo Luo broke through, the emperor sent someone to deliver the news. The team that went to the Burning Sun Hall has returned? After receiving the news, Yi Xian couldn't help but shudder. I wonder what happened to the Burning Sun Hall? Were they destroyed or captured? Master, the people from the Burning Sun Hall and the Absolute Een Palace have all been captured.
The retired emperor has also returned and ordered them to be beheaded at the entrance of the imperial palace at noon tomorrow.
A peak 9th supremacy tribulation venerable reported to Yi Xian. All captured and beheaded at noon tomorrow? Yi Xian raised his eyebrows. It seemed like the retired emperor had obtained the sword-shaped stone. Otherwise, he wouldn't have done so. At the same time, Yi Xian also understood what the retired emperor wanted to do. Kill the chicken to warn the monkey. The Burning Sun Hall and the Absolute Een Palace were audacious and dared to go against the imperial palace. Therefore, the retired emperor wanted to intimidate the other powers in the imperial palace before he went to the Bloodrock sect. Where are those people locked up? Yi Xian hurriedly asked. They are locked up in the imperial prison.
There are more than 10,000 of them.
The venerable continued to report. More than 10,000 people. This caused Yi Xian's heart to tremble. Chapter 929. Not only was Luo Luo angry, but so was Yi Xian. Although there were people from the Jianghu Een Palace, the majority of them were from the Burning Sun Hall. The retired emperor could have killed the higher-ups of the two sects, but there was no need for him to kill the disciples. So many of my fellow disciples will be executed in public at noon tomorrow. No, we can't let him succeed. Yi Xian's eyes flashed.
Where is that old man now?
After the retired emperor came back, he went straight back. He should be going into seclusion. The consecrator continued. Seclusion? Very well. Bring me to the heavenly prison. Yi Xian said coldly. Since that old man wasn't here, he could save Lin Zhantian and the others and fight against that old man together. That old man probably wouldn't have thought that the entire palace was under Yi Xian's control, including his own son and grandson. Naturally, he wouldn't have thought that the people he just captured would be released immediately. However, before going to the heavenly prison, Yi Xian went to find the emperor and asked him to lead him personally. Under the emperor's lead, Yi Xian quickly arrived at the heavenly prison. "Welcome, Your Majesty."
The 3 Ninth Supremes who were sent to suppress the burning sun hall were the guards of the heavenly prison.
When they saw the emperor, they quickly knelt down. However, the moment they knelt down, Yi Xian suddenly walked out from the corner. "I have control." Before the 3 Ninth Supremes could react, they were all controlled by Yi Xian. Now, the 10 Ninth Supremes in the royal sacred dynasty were all servants of Yi Xian. At that moment, Yi Xian quickly rushed to the deepest part of the heavenly prison. More than 10,000 people from the Burning Sun Hall and the Jianghu Palace were imprisoned here.
However, because their Qian rings were taken away and their bodies were sealed, they couldn't even open the door, let alone break through the heavenly prison's array.
Hallmaster. At this moment, Yi Xian had already reached the deepest part of the heavenly prison. He directly shouted towards the inside.
Near the entrance of the heavenly prison was a group of Burning Sun Hall disciples, but there was an elder among them.
It's you?
This Burning Sun Hall elder was very surprised. "Why are you here?"
"I've infiltrated the imperial city. Elder, I'll let you out first." Without another word, Yi Xian opened the door and removed the shackles from the elder's hands.
When the incinerating Sun Hall master and the others heard the commotion, they hastily squeezed through the crowd and walked out.
"Yi Xian, it's actually you."
The incinerating Sun Hall master was astonished.
"Palace Master, I'm very sorry for that day. If I hadn't left, I probably wouldn't have been able to escape death," Yi Xian said guiltily.
He removed the shackles from the Burning Sun Hall master's hands and asked, "Where is the patriarch?"
Being asked this question, the Burning Sun Hall master revealed an aggrieved expression. "Master and master were killed by that old man. Dead." Yi Xian raised his eyebrows, but it made sense.
Lin Zhantian and that red-clothed lady were both Ninth Supreme being peak and posed a threat to the imperial family, so they were killed first.
"Palace Master, don't worry. I will kill that old man and avenge the patriarch and master," Yi Xian said with righteous indignation. "Now, I'll let you out first." "No, there are so many of us. Once we are let out, we will definitely be discovered by the imperial family. When that time comes, that old man will come out again and none of us will be able to leave." The Burning Sun Hall master directly refused. He really thought that Yi Xian had infiltrated the imperial city. However, he definitely wouldn't have thought that the entire imperial palace was already under Yi Xian's control. "No, the entire imperial palace is now under my control." After Yi Xian finished speaking, he turned around and said, "Everyone, come here." The next scene would be unforgettable for the Burning Sun Hall master. The boorish man and the other 2 ninth stage supreme martial artists who had threatened to destroy the Burning Sun Palace Hall appeared in front of the Burning Sun Palace Hall master. Not only that, there was also a middle-aged man wearing a dragon robe and a golden crown behind him. If these people were to combine their auras together, it would be enough to intimidate the 10,000 people in the imperial prison. However, the best part was yet to come. With the emperor in the lead, these people quickly walked behind Yi Xian and then all of them knelt down. "Master," they shouted in unison. This sentence scared the hell out of the Burning Sun Hall master. "Palace Master, after I left that day, I infiltrated the imperial palace and took control of all these people. Right now, there's only that old man in the imperial palace. He has no helpers," Yi Xian explained. "What?" When the Burning Sun Hall master and the 10,000 people behind him heard this, they were so shocked that they could swallow a quail egg. Controlling the emperor of the royal sacred dynasty? At this moment, the Burning Sun Hall master's gaze swept across a person. It was a cute girl with 3 white tails. The Burning Sun Hall master also recognized her. She was one of the disciples of the deceased elder Han Ming. She was also Yi Xian's follower, Luo Luo. The Fox Charm clan was born with the ability to charm others. However, it was a little unrealistic to charm a few Ninth Supreme Being experts. However, it was only now that the Burning Sun Hall master realized that Yi Xian's aura wasn't any weaker than his. Even Luo Luo was an early Ninth Supreme Being. Gulp. The Burning Sun Hall master finally understood how heaven-defying the 2 of them were. The eldest senior brother of the Burning Sun Hall was also a Ninth Tribulation Supreme Being. However, he was already over 35 years old. Furthermore, he died under the palm of the retired emperor together with the palace master of the Absolute Een Palace. However, in front of Luo Luo and Yi Xian, the eldest senior brother of the Burning Sun Hall wasn't even worth mentioning. He was completely like an ant. Is this true? An old man beside him reacted.
He was the vice palace master of the Burning Sun Hall and was also one of Lin Zhantian's disciples. Facing this question, Xian also felt a little helpless. The truth was already in front of him, yet he was still asking if it was true? Could it be that the few Ninth Supreme Being experts behind him were fake?
It's true.
The entire imperial city is now under my control. That old man should have taken the sword-shaped stone and gone into seclusion.
Therefore, he won't know that I let you guys out. Xian nodded solemnly.
Good, this is really good.
Oh my God. I thought that we were going to die tomorrow. Let's go.
While that old man isn't here, let's leave quickly.
A group of Burning Sun Hall's disciples shouted.
Not only that, even the female disciples of the Absolute Een Palace revealed a look of hope.
All right, let's go.
The Burning Sun Hall master replied. There were a total of 12,000 people in this huge imperial prison. Their Chen Kuan rings had all fallen into the hands of the imperial family. To be more precise, they had all been counted and kept in the imperial treasury.
Chapter 930.
Very soon, the 10,000 people escaped from the prison. The imperial guards outside were dumbfounded as they stared at each other. In such a situation, they should have taken out their weapons, but the one who released the prisoners was the emperor.
What could they say?
Tens of thousands of disciples from various sects appeared in the imperial city. The scale of the scene left everyone dumbfounded. Palace Master, you all leave first. I will deal with that old man.
Xian said to the Burning Sun Palace Master.
Xian, revenge is a dish best served cold. But that old man has already surpassed the Supreme Being realm. Even if we work together, we won't be a match for him. The Burning Sun Palace Master said worriedly.
It's fine. I will let them launch a sneak attack.
That old man will never expect his son to do such a thing.
When the time comes, let's see if he will kill or not. Xian said with a slight smile.
In fact, he was going to kill the retired emperor, but he didn't want to worry the Burning Sun Palace Master and the others.
Good, this is a good plan. His own son has betrayed him. Let's see if he can put righteousness before family.
The Burning Sun Hall Master's eyes lit up. The disciples of Burning Sun Hall and Absolute Een Palace behind him also had their eyes lit up as they cheered loudly. The emperor and the others were Xian's servants. No one would expect them to launch a sneak attack on the retired emperor. At that time, if the retired emperor were to kill them in a fit of rage, it would be fun. Unfortunately, they wouldn't be able to witness such a scene.
Xian, be careful.
You are the future of our Burning Sun Palace Master. One of the elders reminded.
Xian and Luo controlled the emperor and peak experts of a high-ranked holy dynasty. With them around, the Burning Sun Palace Master could sit back and relax. Of course, the prerequisite was that they didn't die. I will. Xian nodded.
Then, he ordered the crown prince who was charmed by Luo to lead the 10,000 people away.
As for him, he began to reorganize the troops.
The 9 peak supremes of the royal sacred dynasty, including the emperor, were all under Xian's control. When the time came for them to launch a sneak attack, even if the retired emperor was an expert of fleshly body disaster, he probably wouldn't be able to react in time, right?
Young master, are we going over?
Luo asked.
Go.
When the time comes, hide nearby and wait until the ambush is over before making a move. Xian nodded and replied.
This time he was very determined.
After all, this time, his original body and avatar were going out together. After making the necessary preparations, Xian led the emperor's group of 10 towards the place where the retired emperor was in seclusion.
Not long after, they arrived.
This was an inconspicuous palace in the imperial city, but this was a forbidden area, and no one was allowed to enter. Following that, Xian ordered the 10 emperors to move closer to the retired emperor while he, his doppelganger, and Luo hid nearby. As long as they didn't show themselves, they wouldn't attract the retired emperor's attention. The emperor brought the 9 supreme martial artists with him and approached the palace. Then he said, "Father, bad news. Those people you captured have been rescued by an expert." Since they were going to launch a sneak attack, they naturally had to put on an act. Since the retired emperor had obtained the sword-shaped stone, he was naturally in the midst of comprehending it. If he could comprehend the sword force, then he would be a big shot. However, this seclusion wasn't a very important matter.
If he wanted to, he could do so.
Therefore, the retired emperor quickly walked out. "What's going on?"
An aged voice resounded. The retired emperor finally showed himself. He wanted to use the Burning Sun Palace and the Absolute Palace as a warning to others. But now, they were actually rescued by someone. This was a slap to his face.
"Father, this is the letter left behind by the mysterious expert." The emperor didn't say much and directly passed the letter over. The retired emperor stretched out his withered hand and was about to receive the letter. But at this moment, the sound of wind suddenly appeared.
Huff, huff, huff. The 10 people, including the emperor, all made their move. 10 supreme martial artists simultaneously launched a sneak attack. Even if the retired emperor was an expert of the mortal body disaster, he still couldn't react in time.
What? The retired emperor's eyes widened. The 10 people were very close to him, and the emperor was right beside him.
Therefore, the sneak attack this time all landed on him.
A martial artist cultivated the sovereign golden body, and the first of the 3 sovereign disasters was the mortal body.
The retired emperor's mortal body had far surpassed everyone's imagination. The 10 supreme martial artists' full-strength sneak attack actually couldn't kill him, and only caused him light injuries. The retired emperor's sovereign golden body was useless, but the defense of his mortal body was much stronger than the sovereign golden body. However, all of this was within Yi Xian's expectations. Even if he was only an expert of the mortal body disaster, 10 supreme martial artists wouldn't be able to contend against him. The retired emperor was very puzzled by the sneak attack of his own son, but when he saw Yi Xian's 3 figures, he understood.
"You actually charmed them, you're courting death," he roared, and his aura instantly soared. Just as his voice rang out, the 10 people around him were sent flying, and then he rushed towards Yi Xian.
In fact, Yi Xian was still a little disappointed.
If the 10 people had seriously injured the retired emperor, then their chances of victory would be much higher.
An expert of the mortal body disaster is indeed different.
Their speed is actually much faster than mine.
Yi Xian secretly swallowed his saliva, and at the same time, his eyes flashed, and immediately attacked from several thousand meters away.
Burning Eye. Forbidden Eye of Illusion.
Charm.
This battle was very important.
If they lost, there was a high possibility that they would die. Therefore, Yi Xian and Luo Luo were extremely alert.
At the same time, 6 flying swords attacked the retired emperor.
Humph. It's just an illusion and a mental attack. This old man has lived for nearly 100 years, so how can my mental strength be something you can imagine?
The retired emperor coldly snorted, and raised his hand to slash out with his sword.
This slash was enough to kill any supreme martial artist. However, Yi Xian's attack wasn't just for show. Flowing Shadow Sword. Yi Xian, who was holding the supreme martial artist's shadowless sword, also slashed out. This slash was also enough to kill any supreme martial artist. Boom! The 2 attacks collided, and shockwaves rolled out. In the end, Yi Xian was at a disadvantage. However, one shouldn't forget that Yi Xian still had a doppelganger. Adding the doppelganger's attack, it was just right. A supreme martial artist's spiritual treasure is indeed extraordinary, to actually be able to block my attack. However, the supreme martial artist's spiritual treasure will soon be mine.
The retired emperor's eyes were filled with greed.
Even the powerful imperial family couldn't create a supreme martial artist's spiritual treasure. Back then, the 10,000 Swords Manor had coincidentally obtained 3 supreme martial artists' spiritual treasure blueprints, which allowed them to create a sword embryo. However, they couldn't create a complete supreme martial artist's spiritual treasure. Yi Xian was only able to create the Shadowless Sword and Fallen Star Whip because he had the devouring system. If you want my supreme martial artist's spiritual treasure, then let's see if you have the strength. Chapter 931.
In the next moment, the 6 flying swords attacked the retired emperor.
At the same time, the 10 Ninth Supreme Being experts also rushed over quickly.
Burning Eye. Forbidden Eye of Illusion.
Yi Xian's original body and doppelganger took turns to use it.
Even though there was a difference of a small realm and a large realm between them, it was fine as long as it was effective.
At this moment, the 2 sides had already come into contact. The retired emperor, who was at the 1st grade of human body disaster, had a physique much stronger than Yi Xian's. Even though the latter had a 70% increase in agility, he still couldn't beat his opponent. Fortunately, they had the advantage in numbers. Boom! Boom! Boom!
The two sides were engaged in an intense battle of vital energy. In this aspect, Yi Xian was slightly better. After all, his original body and doppelganger could block the opponent's attacks. Luo Luo, on the other hand, could use the fallen star whip to attack. In addition, she had the 6 flying swords and 10 backup.
What an annoying girl.
The retired emperor also coveted the fallen star whip. After dodging an attack, he actually reached out to grab it. Unexpectedly, with a bang, the retired emperor's left hand was drenched in blood as it was knocked away. Luolua's attack just now didn't hit him, so he didn't know that the fallen star whip had such an effect.
Good chance. Seeing this, Yi Xian hurriedly reminded Luo Luo.
At the same time, his eyes flashed rapidly.
Eye of Nirvana.
Demonic fox flash. After the retired emperor failed once, Yi Xian found an opportunity. Immediately, he saw 2 flashes of light, one silver and one white with golden threads.
Xiao! Xiao!
The 2 flashes of light flashed past. The retired emperor dodged Luolua's demonic fox flash, but was struck by the more powerful Eye of Nirvana. Fortunately, he blocked it at the critical moment with the high-grade Supreme Divine Weapon in his hand. A high-grade Supreme Divine Weapon was even harder than a 9th Supreme Being's golden sovereign body.
The Eye of Nirvana couldn't break it.
However, the impact was so strong that even the retired emperor's right hand trembled.
What a powerful attack.
If my body was hit, I would at least be seriously injured. Cold sweat broke out on the retired emperor's forehead. Although he had been hit, he used the force of the impact to distance himself from Yi Xian. However, he had neglected one thing. His current situation was that he was surrounded by a fierce tiger in front of him and a jackal behind him. Behind him, there were 6 flying swords and 10 9th Supreme Martial Artist peak allies.
Xiao! 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 Xiao!
Countless attacks were launched at him. Even though his speed was fast, it was inevitable that he would be hit a few times. Fortunately, his physical body was much stronger than the sovereign golden body, so he only suffered light injuries.
You do have some ability. If I want to get rid of you, I have to be ruthless. Yi Xian's expression froze.
Now, he made a decision in his heart.
Ding.
Heavenly Eye God Race Bloodline Evolution successful. The system prompted. He still had some advancement points, which he obtained from killing a devourer beast in the Fox Charm Holy Dynasty's breeding ground. He had been keeping it as a backup. Today, he would use it to strengthen his Heavenly Eye clan bloodline. Immediately, the effect of all the Heaven's Eyes increased by a notch.
Fuse.
Since it was only the bloodline of his original body that had evolved, he still needed to fuse with it. After fusing with it, his combat power increased by another 10%.
Burning Eye.
Forbidden Eye of Illusion. This time, the retired emperor could no longer remain calm. Since just now, the burning eye had been tormenting his mind. He was in great pain, but he endured it. But now, the power of the burning eye had increased by more than a little. The retired emperor, who was burned by the burning eye, couldn't help but let out a low cry of pain. In this battle, Yi Xian was in peak condition except for a little consumption of his eye power. However, the retired emperor's body had suffered a few light injuries, and his mental injuries were even more severe, so the situation was not good. His face was gloomy, and he made a decision in his heart. Kill. 10 9th Supreme Martial Artists were harassing him, which was very disadvantageous for him, so he had to be ruthless. Immediately, he turned around and attacked the 10 people behind him in a frenzy. His attack speed was very fast. After all, he was a first-grade human body disaster super expert. In the blink of an eye, countless sword rays flashed. Hiss! 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 A series of crisp sounds rang out as the retired emperor killed 6 9th Supreme Martial Artists in an instant. Vicious and merciless indeed. Yi Xian shuddered. Back then, the retired emperor's giant palm not only killed a large number of experts from the Burning Sun Palace and Absolutine Palace, but also killed many of his own people. So this time, Yi Xian quickly calmed down. Due to the retired emperor's powerful physique, if he wanted to seriously injure him, he could only use the disintegration eye, which was harder to defend against. Luo Luo, prepare for close combat. Yi Xian suddenly said.
Okay.
Luo Luo immediately nodded, indicating that she understood. They had already discussed a countermeasure before this. Immediately, Luo used a secret technique to forcibly increase her strength, which was to start burning that tuft of golden hair.
This time, she had no choice but to use her trump card. Otherwise, it would be hard to say who would win.
After feeling Luo's sudden increase in strength, the retired emperor's expression became more serious. It seemed that he had to show some of his true strength.
Mystic Moon Slash.
The retired emperor raised his right hand and slashed towards Luo. This was his unique technique. If he had used this technique at the start, Yixian would have to use the Eye of the Void to block it. Not good. Yixian could see that this technique was extraordinary, so he immediately thought of something. In the next moment, Luo disappeared from everyone's sight and reappeared next to Yixian. What? The retired emperor was shocked and thought to himself, teleportation?
Retrieving an object couldn't be considered a true teleportation because there was a distance to retrieve it. Furthermore, Luo could only appear next to Yixian. However, using this technique to help Luo dodge the sword gleam was a good idea. After the attack failed, the retired emperor was caught up by Yixian and Luo. Now, it was time to go all out because at such a close distance, it was much harder to dodge the attack. Demon Fox Flash. After getting closer, Luo used her unique technique again.
A white light flashed towards the retired emperor, but he blocked it with his sword.
However, Luo didn't only have the Demon Fox Flash, she also had the Demon Fox clone. Boom! A shockwave swept out.
The retired emperor thought that he had succeeded, but he didn't expect that it was just a clone.
At the same time, Yixian finally activated a technique that he had just learned. Disintegration Eye.
2 invisible energy rays shot towards the retired emperor.
These 2 rays couldn't be seen with the naked eye, but they could be felt. Sizzle!
The 2 rays landed on the retired emperor's weapon. Just as the retired emperor was about to scoff at this attack, he realized that his weapon had started to disintegrate into countless tiny particles.
Chapter 932.
In the blink of an eye, only half of the high-grade supreme divine weapon was left, and it was still rapidly withering. This scene frightened the retired emperor so much that he hurriedly threw away the weapon in his hand.
But at this moment,
Eye of Nirvana!
Eye of Nirvana! Meteor Strike!
Yixian's original body and clone attacked together, and Luo also used the powerful whip technique she had learned from the inherited memories. This time, even if the retired emperor didn't die, he would be reduced to skin.
Pang! Pang!
The retired emperor dodged one of the Eye of Nirvana, but he was struck in the chest by the other one. Not only that, he was also struck in the back by Luo's whip. The 2 powerful attacks collided, and he couldn't help but spurt out a mouthful of blood. His chest and back were already in a mess, and blood was spurting out, making him look extremely ferocious. After fighting for so long, he was finally heavily injured. An expert of human body disaster actually has such a powerful physique.
The Eye of Nirvana is actually unable to kill him. Yixian was shocked. One must know that a casual attack from him could cut a peak supreme divine warrior in half. The Eye of Nirvana's attack was stronger than his sword intent attack, but it was only able to heavily injure his opponent. This was enough to prove that his opponent had a powerful physique. However, the battle was about to end.
The retired emperor, who had suffered 2 attacks, in addition to the mental damage, had lost at least 40% of his battle prowess.
Eye of Nirvana! Eye of Nirvana! Demonic Fox Flash! 3 cold lights lit up at the same time.
The retired emperor, who was heavily injured, didn't have the ability to dodge the 3 attacks coming from different directions, and was instantly struck by them.
Can't do.
The retired emperor's mouth that was full of blood couldn't help but open as he spat out 3 words.
These were the last words he would say in his life. The 3 attacks all landed on his body, crushing his heart. Luo's demonic fox flash directly cut off his head. The retired emperor, who was at the first layer of human body disaster, finally died. Putong! His head fell to the ground, but because his chest and back were heavily injured, the blood didn't spurt too high. Putong! Another muffled sound, and the corpse fell to the ground. Huff huff! Looking at the corpse of the retired emperor, Yixian and Luo both heaved a sigh of relief. Luo's hair also returned to its original state. That old bastard is finally dead. We've finally avenged our master. Luo was immediately overjoyed. He is truly difficult to deal with. If he had a supreme spiritual treasure, I'm afraid we would all die here today. Yi Xian also broke out in cold sweat.
Now that the retired emperor was dead, his interspatial ring belonged to Yi Xian. Yi Xian hurried over and removed the retired emperor's Qian Kuan ring. As the strongest cultivator in the royal sacred dynasty, the retired emperor didn't need to hide his wealth. Hence, this Qian Kuan ring was his entire fortune. Yi Xian emptied the contents into his devouring space and quickly checked them. At this moment, there was a red stone in his devour space.
Blood rock. Is this the blood rock?
The pass to enter the Holy Lands?
Yi Xian took out the blood rock and examined it.
With this blood rock, he could enter the Holy Lands. Luo would soon have the qualifications to enter the Holy Lands as long as she broke through to the peak of the Ninth Supremacy Realm. Now that he had avenged his master and obtained the blood rock, this matter was finally settled. However, just as Yi Xian was about to go wild with joy, ding!
Discovered devouring origin. Suddenly, a system notification rang out, causing Yi Xian to freeze in place. What was the origin of devouring?
However, just by hearing the name, it was definitely related to the devouring system.
While Yi Xian was still pondering, the system notification rang out again. Devouring origin can be used to upgrade the devouring system. Do you wish to upgrade it? When Yi Xian heard this notification, he couldn't help but shudder. Upgrade the devouring system? Young master, what's wrong with you? Luo asked anxiously when she sensed Yi Xian's abnormality. Yi Xian ignored Luo's question.
No, it was as if he didn't hear her at all. He quickly scanned his surroundings and realized that there was a strange stone in the universe ring of the retired emperor. The pattern on the stone was exactly the same as the pattern on the devouring beast.
Devouring origin. Upgrade. He immediately replied. What a joke.
If the devouring system could be upgraded, it would naturally be upgraded.
Unless his brain was fried. Ding. The devouring system is upgrading. The current progress is 1%. The system notification rang out. At the same time, a panel appeared. The progress bar had risen to 1%. The progress bar rose very slowly. It didn't rise by 1% even after a few seconds. However, it wasn't surprising. After all, it was an upgrade system. Even a computer required a lot of time to reinstall its system. What more the devouring system? Yi Xian waited quietly for a minute. However, he realized that the progress bar was still at 1%. It seemed that the devouring system wouldn't be upgraded so quickly. Luo, this young master has struck gold this time. Yi Xian couldn't help but exclaim. Even though she didn't know how he had struck gold, Luo could tell from Yi Xian's expression that Yi Xian was overjoyed. Congratulations, young master. Luo smiled. The stronger Yi Xian was, the happier she was. This was the self-cultivation of a human. This time, it was out of Yi Xian's expectations. He actually obtained a devouring origin. This was the first time he had heard of this name. However, he never expected that it could be used to upgrade the devouring system. He wondered what kind of functions the devouring system would have after the upgrade. The devouring origin had already been used by Yi Xian to upgrade the devouring system. However, Yi Xian quickly took out a pen and paper and asked the emperor, "Have you seen this pattern before?" The emperor and the other three people looked at it and shook their heads. The devouring origin was usually found on the devouring beast. Now that they had the devouring origin, they could expand their search range in the future. Hurry up and give the order for the entire Sage dynasty to search for this symbol. Inform me as soon as you find anything. Yi Xian said to the emperor. Yes, master. The emperor nodded. He didn't even look at his father's corpse and left immediately. Even though the battle was intense, this was a forbidden area. No one was allowed to enter. Hence, no one knew that the retired emperor had fallen. While the devouring system was still being upgraded, Yi Xian entered the retired emperor's palace. He scanned the place with his eye of revelation but didn't find anything hidden. Chapter 933. Luo, hurry up and cultivate. Once you reach the peak of the Ninth Supreme, we will go to the Holy Land. Yi Xian said to Luo. Okay. Luo also understood why Yi Xian wanted to go to the Holy Land. Moreover, with their strength, they were almost invincible in the Blood Cliff continent. Therefore they had to go to a higher place. However, Luo was only at the early Ninth Supreme level. If she wanted to reach the peak of the 9th supreme level, she would need at least a month. This was a conservative estimate. Now that everything was settled, Yi Xian and Luo could go into seclusion. Their clone could also go back to the eastern continent to visit and report their safety. Yi Xian stayed in the retired emperor's palace. In the following time, he kept looking at the progress bar in his mind. After an hour, the progress bar only increased by 1%. It seemed that it would take more than 4 days for the devouring system to finish upgrading. There were still many good things in the retired emperor's yin and yang ring, but they were not enough for Yi Xian to break through, so Yi Xian gave them all to Luo. Luo had the effect of the beast god bloodline. Her cultivation speed was as fast as a rocket. She cultivated for a day, which was equivalent to cultivating for more than 10 days. Very quickly, 4 days passed. Soon, the devouring system will finish upgrading soon. In a corner of the royal sacred dynasty, Yi Xian sat on the ground anxiously. At this time, the progress bar in his mind had already reached 99%. Just a little more and the devouring system would finish upgrading. Half an hour later. Ding! The devouring system has been upgraded. Ding! The sword god bloodline has been upgraded. Ding! The beast god bloodline has been upgraded. Ding! The tree of life bloodline has been upgraded. Ding! The Gemini bloodline has been upgraded. Ding! The Heavenly Eye clan bloodline has been upgraded. The continuous notifications almost made Yi Xian faint. The devouring system had been upgraded. Not only that, it had also upgraded all 5 of his bloodlines. After the upgrade, the perception of the sword god bloodline was increased by 60%, and the power of the sword skills was also increased by 60%. His beast god bloodline strength increased to 4, agility increased to 8, monster growth speed, monster attribute, and monster expansion all increased to 4, Beast King's deterrence and devour increased to 5, and even Beast King's rage, which he hadn't used for a long time, increased to 6. In the virtual god realm, one had to rely on ultimacy, territory, and emperor's will. In the supreme realm, one had to rely on sword will and sovereign golden body. Hence, the Beast King's rage was of little use. However, if he reached the 3 lesser disasters of the supreme martial artist, then the Beast King's rampage should be able to be used as a trump card again. The human body disaster of the 3 sovereign disasters mainly focused on increasing one's physique. Thus, the Beast King rampage could be put to good use again. The Beast God bloodline had improved the most, and the Tree of Life bloodline's recovery speed and detoxification ability had also improved by 3 times. The Heavenly Eye God race had used the Devour points to upgrade twice. In addition to the Devour points given to him by the system this time, he had already upgraded to 4. But next, it was time for the main event. Ding! Refining the second doppelganger. After hearing this notification, Yi Xian's body fiercely trembled. Second doppelganger? Previously, he had used the twin fruits to refine his first doppelganger. But now, with the system's upgrade, the advancement path that originally required 5 advancement points to upgrade had actually been upgraded once. Haha, a second doppelganger. Now I have 3 lives. Yi Xian's heart was already bursting with joy. His original body, first doppelganger, and second doppelganger were equivalent to having 3 lives. Not only that, but even the advancement path of combining doppelganger had been upgraded. Double combination increases my strength by 20%. Triple combination increases my strength by 30%? Unknowingly, Yi Xian's strength had increased by quite a bit. If his original body, first doppelganger, and second doppelganger were to combine, then his strength would directly increase by 30%. Good, this is really good. From now on, I will leave one doppelganger in the eastern continent to accompany my family, while my original body and the other doppelganger will go out and explore. Yi Xian immediately made his decision. Although 10% of his strength was not bad, he still needed to take care of his family and friends. Leaving one doppelganger in the eastern continent was not only to accompany his family, but also to leave himself a way out. In the future, if his original body and first doppelganger were to die, then the second doppelganger would be his original body. At least he would not die. Ding! The second doppelganger has been successfully refined. The system notified. Yi Xian immediately summoned his second doppelganger. It doesn't matter whether the first doppelganger or the second doppelganger. The one going to the eastern continent will be the second doppelganger.
Yi Xian directly listed the second doppelganger as his first doppelganger. Ding, the twin bloodline has been successfully connected.
The system notified again. This time, Yi Xian was completely confused. What did the twin bloodline have been successfully connected mean?
But in the next moment he understood. After the twin bloodline had been successfully connected, then in the future, when his original body devoured heaven and earth treasures, his doppelganger would also benefit and increase his cultivation base. In other words, even if Yi Xian devoured heaven and earth treasures now, his second doppelganger, who was on his way to the eastern continent, would also increase his cultivation base. Simply put, the three doppelganger would share the same data. If one of them was to increase his cultivation base, the other two would be updated from time to time.
Haha, this is going to be awesome.
Yi Xian was already grinning from ear to ear. The upgraded system had brought him too many surprises. In the future, even if his doppelganger worked separately, he would be able to devour heaven and earth treasures directly without saving them for his original body. If his original body comprehended sword force, then the other two doppelganger would be able to use sword force even if they did not merge.
This was the bloodline connection. The bloodline upgrade was completed, but the system notification continued.
Ding, the exchange system has been upgraded.
Ding, the forging system has been upgraded.
Ding, the treasure system has been upgraded.
Ding, the mission system has been activated.
Ding, the treasure system has been activated.
After 5 consecutive notifications, Yi Xian could not help but check the upgraded system. Originally, the exchange system was useless in the Xianxia continent. It could only be used to exchange for some small items, such as equipment, which had to be forged by oneself. However, now that the exchange system had been upgraded, one could directly exchange for supreme divine weapons and supreme spiritual treasures. Previously, the currency was devouring crystals.
Now, there was a new currency called super devouring crystals because of the new system.
However, with Yi Xian's wealth, he couldn't even afford a single supreme spirit treasure.
Originally, the forging system could forge weapons and armors as long as one had a forging blueprint.
Now, after the upgrade, there were more tricks. For example, weapons could be tempered with mystical fire, and could be strengthened to create resonance sets.
The resonance set was a set of equipment that would be much more powerful than before.
Currently, Yi Xian could forge the divine sword set, divine beast set, and so on. However, there was a set called the glorious set, which attracted Yi Xian's attention. These sets appeared according to the bloodline. The divine sword set and divine beast set naturally corresponded to the divine sword bloodline and divine beast bloodline. However, the glorious set was the set of the heavenly eye clan's glorious eye. The glorious eye was a very powerful heavenly eye. After using it, one's chi would turn golden, and one would temporarily learn various powerful skills. The glorious set was used to complement the glorious eye, and could greatly enhance the glorious eye's effect. Unfortunately, Yi Xian had never heard of the materials for these sets.
It was not that he was ignorant but that they were too rare.
Next was the treasure system. Yi Xian's divine beast bloodline could allow Yi Xian to have several treasure sets, but he felt that they were useless. His first treasure set was called Megatron, but it was burned to ashes by Jiang Tianjin's inextinguishable inferno. Chapter 934.
After the upgrade, he could now level up the monster.
However, the level up required devour points, which were the original advancement points. It could also be considered as the corpse of a devouring beast. However, when Yi Xian saw the new function of the upgrade, his body trembled. Resurrection. The reincarnation system had an additional resurrection function. Heavens, it can actually resurrect a monster. Yi Xian opened his eyes wide and quickly glanced at the panel. He noticed that the first monster, Wei Zhentian, could be resurrected.
Ding!
As the system has been upgraded, the system host has one chance to resurrect a monster. The system notified. Hearing this, Yi Xian was so excited that he wanted to kiss it. He never expected that he would be given a chance to resurrect a monster.
Young master, you're almost drooling from your smile.
Luo suddenly appeared. Looking at Yi Xian's expression, she could not help but ridicule him.
Haha, Luo, come and meet your companion.
Yi Xian suddenly laughed. In the next moment, he used the chance to resurrect a monster.
Ding!
Wei Zhentian's resurrection is successful. When the notification sounded, a fist-sized green stone appeared on Yi Xian's shoulder.
Ba Ji. At this moment, the small stone suddenly jumped and extended its mini arms and legs.
Wei Zhentian, long time no see. Yi Xian was so moved that he was about to cry. Back then, in the Shangqing Palace, he was not strong enough. In order to protect him, Wei Zhentian was burned to death by Wei Zhentian's inextinguishable flames. Now it was finally resurrected. Wei Zhentian happily hugged Yi Xian's face and intimately rubbed against it. Here, I'll give you something to eat. Yi Xian took out an ore from his universe ring. Wei Zhentian did not say anything and directly swallowed it. Back then, Wei Zhentian was only a divine beast at the spirit stage. However, after swallowing this ore, its level rapidly increased. Spirit stage. Void God stage. Void God stage King. Void God stage Emperor. Sovereign Sacred Beast. In just a few breaths' time, Wei Zhentian had become a supreme sacred beast. After all, this ore was a material that could be used to forge a high-grade supreme divine weapon. A single piece of ore was enough for Wei Zhentian to reach the 6th grade supreme divine beast level. One had to know that the beast god bloodline had a 40% increase in monster growth. However, one piece was not enough for Wei Zhentian. I'll give you all the ores, but not this blood rock. Yi Xian took out all the ores so that Wei Zhentian could eat his fill. Yi Xian also noticed that after reviving, Wei Zhentian's speed of refining ores wasn't just a little bit faster. Could it be that something strange had happened? He glanced at the interface and realized that Wei Zhentian was no longer an earth spirit. Instead, he was called Earth Monarch. Sure enough, there was a change. However, Wei Zhentian's mutation did not cause the beast god bloodline to mutate like Luo Luo did. Soon, Wei Zhentian had swallowed all the ores. After transforming from an earth spirit to an earth monarch, his refining speed was shockingly fast. In just a few breaths' time, he had become a 8th grade supreme sacred beast. What a cute rock. Young master, what is it? Luo Luo grabbed Wei Zhentian. Yi Xian quickly explained. Earth monarch? I never thought that an earth spirit could mutate. Can it fight? Luo Luo asked curiously. Before Yi Xian could speak, Wei Zhentian, who had fallen into Luo Luo's hand, suddenly turned into a small storm and rapidly expanded. Then, it turned into a green heavenly dragon. Roar! Wei Zhentian roared at the sky. Wow, it looks so powerful. Luo Luo's beautiful eyes were wide open. She also wished that she could have such an ability. Unfortunately, she was only a 3-tailed fox. After the monster system is upgraded, I can still upgrade monsters. However, it requires a lot of devour points. Where am I supposed to find a devourer monster? Yi Xian was helpless. Wei Zhentian's mutation should be an upgrade from an earth spirit to an earth monarch. However, after Luo Luo's mutation, the monster system panel showed a question mark. It was obvious that Luo Luo's bloodline was much more noble than Wei Zhentian's earth monarch. While Wei Zhentian and Luo Luo were playing, Yi Xian placed his attention on the newly activated mission system and treasure system. The mission system was similar to the training hall in the sect. As long as one completed the mission, one would be able to obtain some benefits. Some rewards could not be bought through the exchange system. However, the normal mission rewards were naturally not that good. Other than the normal missions, there was also a type of random mission. This type of random mission could only be triggered under certain circumstances. After completing it, the rewards would be very generous. Random mission can possibly reward devour points? Yi Xian's eyes lit up. The original devour system was called advancement points. It could only be used to upgrade bloodlines. After the upgrade, it was called devour points. Other than upgrading bloodlines, it could also be used to exchange for items and upgrade monsters. Yi Xian did not expect that he would be able to directly complete the random mission and obtain devour points. This was awesome. However, the random mission only had a few lines of explanation. It did not say where or how to trigger it. It was considered a random encounter. As for the newly activated treasure system, Yi Xian did not know much about it. He quickly took a look. Ding! The host can now refine the treasure sky quake sword. The treasure material is the shadowless sword. With Wei Zhentian as the weapon spirit, the compatibility is 100%. Do you want to refine it? When Yi Xian looked over, the system notification sounded. With Wei Zhentian as the weapon spirit? Yi Xian was stunned. He quickly looked at the system's explanation. The treasure system required a weapon spirit and a weapon spirit. The weapon spirit could be a weapon or something else. As for the weapon spirit, it must be something with self-consciousness. For example, Wei Zhentian. The treasure can be strengthened without limit. As long as the host does not die, the treasure will not be destroyed? After Yi Xian finished reading, he could not help but swallow his saliva. Unlimited strengthening meant that the treasure could grow like Wei Zhentian. However, as long as the host did not die, the treasure would not be destroyed. If I let Wei Zhentian be the weapon spirit, as long as my 3 bodies do not die, Wei Zhentian will not die? That was Yi Xian's understanding. At that moment, Yi Xian called Wei Zhentian over and asked about it. The master and the weapon spirit were telepathic. Although Wei Zhentian could not speak, it agreed. Okay, then I will refine you into a treasure. Yi Xian nodded and kept Wei Zhentian.
Ding, begin refining treasure.
Ding, the treasure sky quake sword has been successfully refined. Chapter 935. The sky quake sword was a light green longsword. Its body was translucent and emitted a faint green light. It was similar to the wind dragon slash that Yi Xian once obtained. Without waiting for Yi Xian to speak, the sky quake sword suddenly disintegrated and turned into a green rock. Wei Zhentian. Haha, I've refined Wei Zhentian into a sword. Yi Xian looked at Wei Zhentian in his hand and with a thought, he turned it back into the sky quake sword. The sky quake sword was now Yi Xian's treasure. As long as Yi Xian didn't die, Wei Zhentian wouldn't die and could be considered invincible. Yi Xian quickly glanced at the panel and discovered that Wei Zhentian's realm had been forcefully raised to a transcendent sacred beast. After all, the sky quake sword's material, the shadowless sword, was a supreme spiritual treasure. From now on, Yi Xian could use ores and other items to strengthen the sky quake sword. At the same time, Wei Zhentian's realm would also increase. After forging Wei Zhentian into the heaven-shaking sword, Yi Xian discovered that there was actually another skill in the heaven-shaking sword. 10,000 swords return to origin. This 10,000 swords return to origin could only be used once a day. It seemed to be a very powerful skill. However, although the name was 10,000 swords, there were only 100 swords. Immediately, Yi Xian stood up and threw the sky quake sword in his hand. 10,000 swords returned to origin. In an instant, the sky quake sword split into 100 sky quake swords and danced in the air like lightning. If there was an enemy inside, they would be instantly shredded into pieces.
If I had used this move when I was fighting against the retired emperor, I'm afraid he would have been shredded into pieces by the 10,000 swords returned to origin.
Yi Xian looked at the 100 sky quake swords dancing in the air and thought again. Spiritual sword array. In the next moment, the 100 sky quake swords circling in the air above the palace quickly enlarged and turned into giant swords. Bang! 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 One by one, enormous swords that shook the heavens suddenly descended and pierced into the surroundings of Yi Xian. Over 100 enormous swords that shook the heavens directly surrounded Yi Xian, leaving no room for escape. This was the spiritual sword array, a defensive technique. Yi Xian looked around at the spiritual sword array that not even an ant could enter. He immediately clapped and cheered. Very good. Wei Zhentian, return to your original form. Yi Xian was very satisfied. Immediately, the heaven-shaking giant swords disappeared one by one, leaving behind only the heaven-shaking sword. Next, the skyquake sword transformed again. Following Wei Zhentian's will, it transformed into a green pony. Young master, you're so powerful now. If you were this powerful a few days ago, we wouldn't have to fight so intensely.
Luolua's eyes lit up as she praised.
Yi Xian nodded in agreement. However, if his devouring system had been upgraded that day, he wouldn't even need to use the 10,000 returning swords. He could just rely on his bloodline to deal with the retired emperor. After all, after the devouring system was upgraded, all of his bloodlines had advanced once. By now, Yi Xian had already experienced both the upgraded and newly unlocked systems. However, there was still a system that had yet to be unlocked that attracted Yi Xian's attention. The bloodline fusion system. The host is still missing a battle bloodline. It is unable to be unlocked. This was the reason why the bloodline fusion system had yet to be unlocked. After Yi Xian saw it, his eyes lit up again. Now he already had 5 bloodlines. The Sword God bloodline, the Beast God bloodline,
the Divine Tree of Life bloodline, the Gemini bloodline, and the Heavenly Eye clan bloodline. He had 2 Constitution bloodlines and 2 support bloodlines. However, he was still missing a battle bloodline. It seemed that the bloodline fusion system could only be unlocked by having 6 bloodlines in one body. I wonder if I can fuse the battle bloodline with the battle bloodline, or can I just choose any one of them? Yi Xian didn't understand either, but he knew that the bloodline fusion system must be very powerful. Unfortunately, the battle bloodline wasn't expensive, but the battle bloodline expansion slot was extremely expensive. Yi Xian only hoped to buy the battle bloodline expansion slot before he reached the 3 sovereign disasters. As for the new battle bloodline, he had already chosen it. After the devouring system was upgraded, the bloodline had also been upgraded. However, he couldn't afford the battle bloodline expansion slot, so he only gave it a cursory glance. Now that the devouring system had been upgraded, Yi Xian couldn't just sit there and do nothing. Luo hadn't broken through to the mid-stage 9th sovereign realm, so Yi Xian wanted to take this opportunity to visit the other high-grade holy empires. Luo, I'm going out for a while, Yi Xian said to Wei Zhentian, who was playing with him. N. Luo replied softly. Only Yi Xian's main body went out. His first clone was still here to comprehend the sword-shaped stone. If Yi Xian's main body was in danger, he could immediately send Luo and Wei Zhentian into the storage space and let his main body out. However, Yi Xian could be considered to be invincible in the Blood Cliff continent. There were a total of 4 holy empires in the Blood Cliff continent. Other than the Royal Sacred Dynasty, there were 3 more. This time, Yi Xian's target was the Cyan Feather Holy Dynasty, which was the closest to the Royal Sacred Dynasty. In terms of strength, the Cyan Feather Holy Dynasty couldn't be compared to the Royal Sacred Dynasty. However, the treasures in the Cyan Feather Holy Dynasty's treasury were definitely more than the Royal Sacred Dynasty's. Yi Xian rushed at full speed. In just 5 days, he had already reached the imperial capital of the Cyan Feather Holy Dynasty from the Royal Sacred Dynasty. The Emperor of the Cyan Feather Holy Dynasty was also a peak 9th supreme being. There was also an expert in the imperial capital who had passed human body disaster. With my current strength, I can directly kill my way in. There is no need to use the Eye of Control. However, it's better to be safe. Yi Xian narrowed his eyes and directly arrived outside the imperial capital. Without waiting for the imperial capital's general to speak, Yi Xian directly controlled him. Lord, please enter. The imperial capital's general directly led Yi Xian in. The soldiers guarding the imperial capital were also very surprised. They had been guarding the imperial capital for so long, but this was the first time they saw Yi Xian. However, they didn't dare to ask too much. After successfully entering the imperial capital, Yi Xian directly said, "Bring me to your emperor." Yes. The imperial capital's general respectfully replied. With him leading the way, Yi Xian didn't need to look for the emperor himself. Soon, he arrived at the emperor's court. In a dignified and luxurious hall, one official after another respectfully bowed. A middle-aged man sat on the dragon throne. He was the emperor of the Cyan Feather Holy Dynasty. However, Yi Xian just directly walked in. General Hong, who is he? When the emperor saw the imperial capital's general, he was very surprised and asked. It was time for the imperial capital's court. What was the imperial capital's general doing here instead of guarding the imperial capital? Yi Xian was too lazy to talk nonsense. He directly used the Eye of Control on the emperor. The Heavenly Eye clan's bloodline had been upgraded twice by the advancement points. After the devouring system was upgraded, it was upgraded once more. Therefore, the effect was much stronger than before. Yi Xian only used the Eye of Control once to successfully control the Cyan Feather Holy Dynasty's emperor. Ah, so it's Lord Envoy. Chapter 936. The civil and military officials were still kneeling. They didn't dare to turn around and could only listen. Soon, they felt that the emperor had been abducted, so they could only continue kneeling. But what surprised them was that the envoy was only a mid-stage supreme being. But they didn't think too much about it. It must be because their cultivation level was too low. Just like that, Yi Xian abducted the emperor during the court session and asked him to bring him to the national treasury. The national treasury of the Royal Sacred Dynasty had been used by the retired emperor to exchange for the blood rock. But before he could use the rock to enter the sacred land, he was killed by Yi Xian.
The blood rock and the sword-shaped stone fell into Yixian's hands. However, the Cyan Feather Sacred Dynasty didn't do that.
They knew that even if they sent people to the Blood Rock sect, they would only send the lowest level people.
It was better for them to develop in the Blood Rock continent. They would rather be the head of a lion than the tail of a phoenix. Yixian let the Cyan Feather Sacred Dynasty's emperor bring him to the national treasury. But the moment the door was opened, a powerful aura covered the entire area. "Son, why are you not in the court session? What are you doing in the national treasury?" An old voice sounded. Yixian turned around and saw an old man in green robes flying over. "Greetings, father." The emperor hurriedly greeted him. If it was before, Yixian would definitely be shocked. But when he saw the retired emperor of the Cyan Feather Sacred Dynasty, he didn't care at all. "Who is this kid?" The retired emperor of the Cyan Feather Sacred Dynasty flew over and looked at Yixian. At this time, the emperor should be in the court session. But why did he bring a young man to the national treasury? "Don't ask. Your son is under my control. If you know what's good for you, turn around and leave," Yixian said calmly. With his current strength, he didn't need to be afraid of the other party. In this world where the strong were respected, heavenly treasures belonged to the strong. "What did you say?" When he heard Yixian, the Grand Emperor of the Cyan Feather Holy Dynasty glared at him. He turned around and saw that his son was kneeling beside Yixian. It meant that Yixian was telling the truth. A ninth supreme being controlled by a ninth supreme being was truly inconceivable. "No, you're not a mid-stage ninth supremacy," the Grand Emperor of the Cyan Feather Holy Dynasty exclaimed. "Forget it, you're the one who's courting death." Yixian's eyes flashed. In the next moment, two figures appeared beside him. "Luo, Wei Zhentian." "Young master, are you going to charm him?" Luo looked at the Grand Emperor of the Cyan Feather Holy Dynasty and asked curiously. Yixian nodded. In the next moment, he used Burning Eye on the old man. "Charm." Luo didn't hesitate and used her charm. The two mental attacks penetrated into the old man's head. "You're courting death." The old man was shocked and hurriedly threw out a punch. However, a giant shield suddenly appeared in front of Yixian and blocked the punch. Although Wei Zhentian was refined into a treasure, it could still transform. Moreover, it had the hardness of a supreme being's spiritual treasure. "Wei Zhentian, bind him!" Yixian shouted. "Kacha! Kacha!" Hearing this, Wei Zhentian immediately disintegrated into a suit of armor, which then charged toward the old man in pieces. "Get lost!" The old man threw out a punch crazily. However, with his cultivation level, he couldn't destroy a supreme being's spiritual treasure. After a few crisp sounds, the old man put on the armor that Wei Zhentian had transformed into. At that moment, he couldn't move at all. "What is this thing?" The Grand Emperor of the Cyan Feather Holy Dynasty was shocked. He was a first-grade human body disaster expert. He could split mountains and split the earth with a punch. He had an extremely strong physique, but he was actually sealed by a strange thing. How could this be possible? Burning Eye. Charm. The Grand Emperor of the Cyan Feather Holy Dynasty couldn't move at all. He could only become a target. His willpower was constantly being weakened. Yixian had never tried to control a human body disaster expert. Although it was a small level and a big level above, Yixian's Heavenly Eye clan bloodline was already powerful. Moreover, he had advanced 3 times. It should be possible for him to control a human body disaster expert. ****. Where did you come from?" The Grand Emperor of the Cyan Feather Holy Dynasty shouted angrily. In just 2 seconds, he felt pain that he hadn't felt in decades. No matter how strong his willpower was, he couldn't withstand such torture. Burning Eye. Charm. Forbidden Eye of Illusion. Another round of mental attacks. At that moment, the Grand Emperor of the Cyan Feather Holy Dynasty's face twitched. He was hit by the Forbidden Eye of Illusion? Yixian was overjoyed. It seemed that the Grand Emperor of the Cyan Feather Holy Dynasty's mental strength had been weakened by him. Eye of Control. This time, Yixian directly used the Eye of Control. Ding, control successful. When the system notification sounded, the green armor that Wei Zhentian had turned into shattered instantly. Then, it reformed into the Skyquake sword, which floated in the air. Greetings, Master.
The Grand Emperor of the Cyan Feather Holy Dynasty knelt on one knee.
Very good. Yi Xian nodded in satisfaction. Now, he had a human body disaster servant. Then, he took the Grand Emperor's interspatial ring. After sweeping it with his fist, he threw it to Luoluo.
Luoluo found many good things in it. She immediately smiled and said, "Thank you, young master."
Originally, she estimated that she would need a month to break through to the peak of the 9th Supreme Being level. But now, the time could be shortened.
Go in.
At that moment, Yi Xian ordered the emperor to enter the treasury. There were many things in the Cyan Feather Holy Dynasty's treasury, but it wasn't enough for Yi Xian to break through to the peak of the 9th Supreme Being level. Pass down the order to find this pattern. After that, Yi Xian ordered the emperor to search for the devouring rune. Then, Yi Xian quickly left the Cyan Feather Holy Dynasty and headed for his next target. The entire Blood Cliff continent seemed to have become Yi Xian's backyard. No one could stop him. Half a month later, Yi Xian swept through the remaining 2 high-grade holy dynasties. One of them was the Lion Emperor Holy Dynasty of the Beast Race. After plundering the 4 high-grade holy dynasties, Yi Xian's realm rose to the peak of the 9th Supreme Being level as expected. At that moment, in a certain corner of the Blood Cliff continent. Although I broke through to the peak of the 9th Supreme Being level, I still can't pass the human body disaster. Yi Xian had a headache. Even if he robbed all the holy dynasties in the Blood Cliff continent, he wouldn't be able to reach the peak. So he gave up. Young master, in a few more days, I will be able to break through to the peak of the 9th Supreme Being level. Luoluo's voice sounded in Yi Xian's mind. All right, you continue to cultivate. This young master will go visit those mid-grade holy dynasties. Yi Xian replied. Chapter 937. Devour points could be used to upgrade one's bloodline, to upgrade one's body, or to exchange for other items. There were many uses for them. As for the source of Devour, it was a necessity to fuse one's bloodline. Of course, it could also be used to exchange for treasures. In short, there were 3 types of currency. Super Devour crystals, Devour points, and Devour source. Battle bloodline expansion was very expensive, but if one could obtain Devour points, they could replace a large amount of Super Devour crystals. Unfortunately, devouring beasts were not easy to find. Yi Xian passed through more than 10 mid-grade holy dynasties, but he couldn't find any in the treasury.
Young master, I've already broken through to the peak of 9th supremacy.
Just as Yi Xian was preparing to continue his journey, Luoluo sent him another message.
All right, I'll return immediately.
Yi Xian nodded, then broke through the void and teleported several times. He had 4 spatial coordinates, so he easily passed through dozens of holy dynasties and returned to the royal sacred dynasty.
Young master, can we leave now?
Luoluo asked when she saw Yi Xian return. Yi Xian nodded. It had been more than half a year since Song Suijing and Song Jejue were captured by the Yin Yang old ancestors. Therefore, Yi Xian didn't want to stay for a moment longer. Now their group was very strong. Whether it was Yi Xian or Luoluo, they both had the strength to fight against a human body disaster expert. Wei Zhentian was even more powerful. Because it had fused with the supreme spiritual treasure, Shadowless Sword, it was already at the supreme spiritual treasure level. In addition to the spiritual treasure system, it was now undying, unless Yi Xian's main body and 2 clones fell. However, Yi Xian left his second clone in the eastern continent, and old immortal Tianju was in the eastern continent. Although it wasn't 100% safe, there was still a 99% chance. After tidying up, they prepared to set off. However, just as they were about to set off, a powerful aura suddenly entered Yi Xian's detection range. So strong, this aura is several times stronger than the human body disaster experts of various countries. Yi Xian swallowed his saliva. At this time, his nerves were already tense. Logically speaking, there shouldn't be such a powerful person on the Blood Cliff continent, so he guessed that this person should be from the Holy Land. This was a young man dressed in red. He looked to be around 30 years old. He flew directly above the Royal Sacred Dynasty's imperial city and shouted, "Where is Wu Gaoyi?" This sentence entered the ears of everyone in the imperial city, causing them to be astonished. Who was Wu Gaoyi?
How dare you trespass into the imperial city?
A general who didn't have eyes yelled and led a small team to rush forward.
Noisy!
Unexpectedly, the red-clothed young man waved his hand a few times,
and a few palm blades instantly killed the entire team.
What a joke!
A mere supreme being dares to challenge the experts of the 3 sovereign disasters? Others may not know who Wu Gaoyi was, but Yi Xian did. Wu Gaoyi was the retired emperor of the royal sacred dynasty whom he and Luo Luo had joined forces to kill. Immediately, the emperor flew forward and respectfully said, "Greetings, Lord Envoy.
My father is out. In 7 days, the Blood Cliff Sex team will pick you up. If you are late, you will bear the consequences."
The red-clothed young man said in a low voice. No, my father has already given the Blood Cliff to a genius of the royal family. The emperor hurriedly shook his head.
Immediately after, Yi Xian and Luo Luo flew up. At the same time, Yi Xian still held the Blood Cliff in his hand. Good, then leave with me now.
The red-clothed young man nodded slightly, preparing to leave with Yi Xian. The emperor hurriedly pointed at Luo Luo and said, "Lord Envoy, her aptitude is not bad. She is only 15 years old this year and has already broken through to the peak of the 9th sovereign realm.
She has met the requirements of the Blood Cliff sect. Please bring her along with you."
The Blood Cliff sect's requirements were to break through to the peak of the 9th sovereign realm before the age of 20, and Luo Luo was only 15 years old.
She definitely met the requirements.
However, there were many heavenly treasures in this world that could preserve one's appearance.
It was impossible to judge from one's appearance. 15 years old, huh? Not bad. Your royal sacred dynasty has finally produced a genius after so many years.
The red-clothed young man nodded slightly. Shortly after, he took out a purple crystal and threw it to Luo Luo. "Hold on to it."
Luo Luo caught the purple crystal. In the next instant, the purple crystal shone brightly, flashing for a total of 15 times. Indeed, 15 years old. Even in my Blood Cliff sect, such aptitude is not bad.
The red-clothed young man was very satisfied.
What he said was the truth.
After all, the place where Luo Luo lived in was the Blood Cliff continent, not the sacred lands. If Luo Luo had grown up in the sacred lands, she would have already passed her human body disaster. At this time, the red-clothed young man's gaze landed on Yi Xian. However, he can only enter my Blood Cliff sect with the help of the Blood Cliff sect. He still has to work in the labor hall for 3 full years or pass his human body disaster before he can be promoted to a disciple.
Labor hall? 3 full years? Yi Xian's eyebrows twitched.
The labor hall was obviously a place for laborers.
Moreover, he had to work there for 3 full years?
However, it was not necessary to work there for 3 full years to be promoted to a disciple. After all, there was still the path to breakthrough.
All right, my Blood Cliff Sex team will arrive in 7 days. Let's go.
The red-clothed young man grabbed Yi Xian and Luo Luo, one in each hand, and flew directly into the distance. This Blood Cliff continent was one of the 10 territories under the Blood Cliff sect. Moreover, it was not very valued, so the red-clothed young man was the only one guarding it. As for the entrance to the sacred lands, it was not on the Blood Cliff continent, but on a small island on the edge of the Blood Cliff continent. The red-clothed young man grabbed Yi Xian and Luo Luo, and spent 5 days to return to the small island. Before they landed, the small island was already in an uproar.
Master is back.
Yi Xian looked at the small island and swept it with his eye of revelation.
His face turned pale with fright.
On the shore of the small island, there were more than 100 beautiful women.
Moreover, their strength was not weak. They were at least 9th Tribulation Supremes. These are my wives and concubines. Stay on the small island for a night and don't run around. If you delay, you will bear the consequences. Tomorrow, I will send you into the sacred lands, and my Blood Cliff sect team will escort you back to the Blood Cliff sect.
The red-clothed young man directly left Yi Xian and Luo Luo behind, and then entered a palace under the escort of the 100 beautiful women.
F***CK.
Yi Xian was already so shocked that he prostrated himself on the ground. This red-clothed young man was only an ordinary disciple of the Blood Cliff sect, but on this Blood Cliff continent, he was a tyrant.
What a playboy. Looks like he's not a good person, Luo Luo said softly. This sentence almost scared Yi Xian to death.
Fortunately, Luo Luo said it directly in his mind and did not open her mouth.
Chapter 938. Don't speak carelessly. I'm afraid that this person is a 2nd or 3rd grade human body disaster expert. Yi Xian warned. Although he also felt that this red-clothed youth had a little too many wives and concubines,
Even if he had 3 a day, it would still take a month. Young master, I won't say it. However, if it's only second-grade human body disaster, we should be able to deal with it, right?
Luo asked curiously.
Hearing this, Yi Xian nodded. Me and you together with Wei Zhentian should be able to fight a second-grade human body disaster expert. However, we shouldn't be able to fight a third-grade human body disaster expert, unless we make a breakthrough.
Oh, I'll go and cultivate.
If I don't have any worldly treasures, I estimate that I'll need at least 3 months to pass the first-grade human body disaster.
Luo pouted.
3 months was already an extremely frightening number. Even the retired emperor had spent an entire 10 years, as well as a large amount of heavenly and earthly treasures to break through to the first layer of human body disaster.
Don't worry, when we reach the sacred land, I'll get the worldly treasures for you. Yi Xian vowed.
In his hand, there was a sword-shaped stone. Previously, he had given the stone to the Burning Sun Hall Master, but later on, he found out that the stone was extremely precious, even more precious than a supreme spiritual treasure. If he revealed the secret of the stone, that red-clothed youth might just kill him and steal it. Therefore, Yi Xian wanted to find an opportunity to give the stone to him after entering the sacred land. Unfortunately, the stone was a comprehension item, so it wouldn't have much value if he devoured it. During this day, Yi Xian and Luo casually found a place on this small island to pass the time. Ever since the devouring system was upgraded, there was an additional mission system. This mission system was pretty good, but it was a pity that Yi Xian was currently in the Bloodcliff continent. The missions here were all very low-level missions, which were nothing more than killing people, hunting supreme sacred beasts, finding materials, and the like. The rewards were also cheap, such as low-grade supreme divine weapons. Therefore, Yi Xian didn't want to waste his time. However, when they reached the sacred land, the missions would be more effective. After completing the mission, he would be rewarded with precious ores, supreme martial arts, and even the necessities for opening his heaven's eye. However, for Yi Xian, the most attractive thing was the devour point. Yi Xian and Luo stayed on the island for a day. The next day, the red-clothed young man came looking for him.
My Blood Rock sex team will be here soon. The 2 of you follow me. The red-clothed youth said to Yi Xian and Luo.
Yi Xian and the other 2 quickly followed him and entered the palace of the red-clothed youth. The Holy Land was actually a huge secret realm that was countless times larger than the Bloodcliff continent. The entrance to the secret realm was beneath the palace. Soon, Yi Xian saw the entrance to the secret realm.
Come in.
The red-clothed youth led Yi Xian and Luo inside. After Yi Xian and Luo passed through, they couldn't help but shiver. They looked around and found that the Holy Land was no different from the Bloodcliff continent. However, the yuan qi in the Holy Land was at least 10 times that of the Bloodcliff continent. They stopped at the edge of a cliff, and in front of them was a boundless grassland. My Bloodrock sect might not be a big deal in the Penglai Holy Land, but to you, we are a big deal. Kid, since you entered using the Bloodrock, you can choose not to enter the Bloodrock sect. The red-clothed youth said to Yi Xian.
I choose to enter.
Yi Xian nodded. What a joke. The yuan qi in the Holy Land was so abundant. If he cultivated there, his cultivation speed would be at least 10 times faster than the outside world. There were probably many experts who had passed human body disaster. Wandering in the Holy Land alone was simply courting death. It was better to find a place to understand the Holy Land first. However, Yi Xian found out something from the red-clothed youth's words. There was probably more than one Holy Land. The Holy Land where the Bloodrock sect was located was called the Penglai Holy Land. He just didn't know if the Yinyang Old Ancestor was in the Penglai Holy Land. Lord Envoy, have you heard of the Yinyang Old Ancestor?
Yi Xian asked.
Yinyang Old Ancestor? The red-clothed youth frowned. He didn't know why Yi Xian asked this, but he still replied, I haven't heard of him. Has he appeared in the Bloodrock continent before?
Yes, I was lucky enough to see him half a year ago.
He should be from the Holy Land. When he left, he should have brought a man and a woman with him. Yi Xian immediately nodded and took out a portrait.
Oh, it's this senior.
The red-clothed youth immediately recognized him and said, The Bloodrock continent is under the control of my Bloodrock sect. There are many experts here, and this senior is one of them. Then, Lord Envoy, do you know who this senior is?
Yi Xian's eyes immediately lit up.
He had previously guessed that the Yin old ancestor came from the Holy Land, and now it was confirmed.
I'm not sure.
Even the experts from the Wanxiang realm have come to the Bloodrock continent before. They usually come to the Bloodrock continent to explore and excavate, and occasionally help to expand the territory. I was lucky enough to see them a few times, and this senior you speak of is probably even stronger than the experts from the Wanxiang realm.
He isn't someone I can come into contact with.
The red-clothed youth shook his head and asked, "Why?
Do you need this senior for something? Stronger than the experts from the Wanxiang realm?" Yi Xian swallowed his saliva. It seemed that things were going to be troublesome.
He didn't expect the Yin old ancestor to be so powerful. Those from the Wanxiang realm had the ability to move islands.
Even 10,000 Yi Xian wouldn't be a match for them.
However, this Yin old ancestor was even stronger than the experts from the Wanxiang realm.
Yi Xian immediately felt a huge pressure.
Yi Xian calmed down and replied, "No, I was just lucky enough to see that senior that day. I didn't expect that senior to be so strong."
"Oh, indeed.
That senior is the strongest person I've ever seen." The red-clothed youth thought that Yi Xian was related to the Yin old ancestor. He didn't expect that he had only met him once. Yi Xian didn't want to spread the news that Song Suijing and Song Jujue were captured by the Yin old ancestor just in case.
"Then, senior brother, have you heard of old immortal Jianghu?"
Yi Xian continued asking.
"Old immortal Jianghu?"
The red-clothed youth frowned and said, "Nope."
This answer surprised Yi Xian. Just as Yi Xian was about to take out the portrait of old immortal Jianghu, a cry suddenly came from the sky.
Yi Xian and the other two turned their heads and saw a giant blood-red bird flying over.
"My Bloodrock sex team is here," the red-clothed youth said. As soon as he finished speaking, the giant blood-red bird flew over their heads.
So fast. Yi Xian swallowed his saliva because his eyes of perception found an aura that was many times stronger than the red-clothed youth.
Oh, the 10th Bloodrock continent sent 2 people this year? Chapter 939.
Lord Deacon, this little girl's aptitude has reached the sex standards, the red-clothed youth said respectfully. The red-clothed old man's gaze locked onto Luo's body and said, "It's actually a little fox."
"This is the first time I've seen it." After he finished speaking, he took out a crystal to test Luo's age.
15 years old, not bad, not bad. This is the best result in the history of the 10th continent. The red-clothed old man nodded with satisfaction, then looked at Yi Xian and said, "Kid, how old are you?"
24.
Yi Xian answered honestly, at the same time handing over a blood rock.
"With this blood rock, you can work in the labor hall for 3 years.
The red-clothed old man took the rock and said, "You too, get on the back of the bloodrock bird."
Yi Xian and Luo heard this and flew up with the red-clothed old man.
When they arrived on the back of the bloodrock bird, they found that there were already many people on it. These people were all very young, and some had even reached the realm of human body disaster.
"Sigh, our Bloodrock continent is too low level. These people should be from other Bloodrock continents." Yi Xian sighed in his heart. From the crown prince of the royal sacred dynasty, he found out that there wasn't just one Blood Cliff continent. There were quite a few. These geniuses gave Yi Xian immense pressure. The Bloodrock bird began to fly. This red-clothed old man was only a deacon of the Bloodrock sect. He was in charge of picking up newcomers in this area every year. And Yi Xian's Bloodrock continent was not the last, so they still had to go around. Next, Yi Xian and Luo stayed on the back of the Bloodrock bird for 7 days, picking up more than 10 people before flying to the Bloodrock sect. During this time on the back of the Bloodrock bird, Yi Xian relied on his eye of perception to hear many things from the surrounding people. For example, the Bloodrock bird they were riding on was nurtured by the Bloodrock sect. Another example was that the Bloodrock sect was built on a Bloodrock mine. Those who did not meet the requirements to enter the Bloodrock sect had to work in the labor hall for 3 years. During these 3 years, they had to mine Bloodrock. The Bloodrock can be used to forge Supreme Being's spiritual treasures. If it was given to Wei Zhentian, it would definitely be able to greatly increase his strength. Now, I'm going to be sent to mine Bloodrocks. With the devouring space, I'm going to make a fortune. Yi Xian's eyes lit up. Those who entered the Bloodrock mine were not allowed to wear universe rings. The Bloodrock sect would issue universe rings to prevent people from stealing Bloodrocks. However, no one would be able to discover Yi Xian's devouring space. When the time came, he would be able to do some sneaky things. Thinking of this, Yi Xian was excited because he had found a way to make money. After another week, the Blood Cliff bird finally arrived at the Blood Cliff sect. The red-robed old man jumped to the ground, and a disciple immediately came to greet him. "All right, those who meet the entry requirements, come with me. The rest follow him to the labor hall." The red-clothed old man said, "Young master, my aptitude is not bad. When the time comes, I will help you get it." Luo Luo said in his mind, "No need, I can get it out myself. You just focus on cultivating." Yi Xian directly refused.
"All right, then Luo Luo will leave first." Luo Luo giggled, then left with a red-clothed old man.
Looking at her departing figure, Yi Xian revealed a sorrowful expression. Because it was like this every time. When Luo Luo was in the royal sacred dynasty, she was directly recruited as a consecrated, and he was only a small captain of the Imperial Guard.
At this time, he looked around and found that there were more than 30 people like him who were sent to the labor hall.
"All of you, follow me," a red-clothed disciple of the Blood Rock sect said. Those who stayed with Yi Xian were all peak supreme beings, but they were all over 20 years old. Therefore they had to stay in the labor hall for 3 full years, or break through the 3 minor disasters during this time. Yi Xian mixed in with these people and followed the red-clothed disciple to the labor hall to register, then distributed some things and accommodation. "Now, you are all odd jobs disciples of the Blood Rock sect. I think you already know that the most important task of the labor hall is to mine blood rocks. Every person has to hand in 30 blood rocks every month, which is 1 piece per day. If you are found to be lazy, you will be expelled from the Blood Rock sect." The disciple said.
"Senior brother, what if we mine a few more blood rocks?"
Someone asked. "You still have to hand in the extra rocks, but it will be recorded. Every person will get 1 blood rock every day, which is 30 pieces per month. If you mine more blood rocks, for example, 40 pieces, then you will get 1 blood rock as a reward, which is 1/10 of the total." The red-clothed disciple explained. After hearing this, Yi Xian couldn't help but secretly roll his eyes. To put it simply, every month, they had to dig out at least 30 blood rocks. If they dug out more than 10, they would get 1 blood rock as a reward. If they dug out more than 100, they would get 10 blood rocks as a reward. How greedy! I will collect as many as I dig out tomorrow. Yi Xian secretly laughed. With the devouring space, he only needed to hand in 1 blood rock every day. Soon, he returned to his residence to rest.
Luo Luo had already been taken away by the red-clothed elder.
With her talent, there should be someone who would accept her as a disciple. Not long after, Luo Luo sent back a message.
"Young master, an elder has accepted me as a disciple."
Luo Luo's delighted voice rang in Yi Xian's mind. "Elder? That's right. What is his cultivation level?"
Yi Xian raised his eyebrows. "Master told me not to ask too much," Luo Luo replied, "but he gave me 1,000 blood rocks."
1,000 blood rocks. After hearing this, Yi Xian almost swallowed his Adam's apple. Other people would work hard in the blood rock vein for an entire day, and they would only get 1 or 2 blood rocks. Moreover, they would have to hand them all in, but Luo Luo actually got 1,000 blood rocks. It should be known that even a first-grade supreme spiritual treasure of the lowest quality would require 100 blood rocks. If a servant disciple could dig out 4 blood rocks every month and hand in 30 pieces, they would get a blood rock every month as a reward. That would be 12 blood rocks a year. If they wanted to buy a supreme spiritual treasure, they would need to spend 9 years. "Young master, do you want it? As long as you break through the first-grade human body disaster, you can be promoted to an official disciple," Luo Luo asked. "Not for now. I will go to the blood rock vein tomorrow to take a look. When the time comes, you can directly exchange your 1,000 blood rocks for heavenly treasures for your own cultivation. Also, give me some forging materials. Young master, you can go and forge a supreme spiritual treasure," Yi Xian said. "Okay." Very soon, a day had passed. This was Yi Xian's first day in the Blood Rock sect. Chapter 940. The next day, Yi Xian went to the assembly early in the morning. This new batch of odd job disciples needed to go to the Blood Rock vein to mine. The red-clothed disciple from yesterday also arrived on time. "All right, you 35 people, follow me to the Blood Rock vein. Let's go." After the red-clothed disciple finished speaking,
He took the lead and flew in a certain direction. After flying for an hour, they finally saw a pillar of pink light that soared into the sky. That's one of the mines of my Blood Rock sect. It's the smallest one. When the time comes, you are only allowed to bring weapons into the Blood Rock vein, the red-clothed disciple said. Senior brother, is there any danger in the Blood Rock vein?
Someone asked worriedly. Yes, there is.
There's a transcending saint beast called the Blood Rock spider. It's comparable to a first-stage human body disaster. You have to be careful when you excavate the stone walls, because sometimes, you will find the nest of the Blood Rock spider. However, you don't have to worry. There are disciples of my sect guarding the Blood Rock vein. If a Blood Rock spider appears, they will kill it, the red-clothed disciple replied. Hearing that there was danger, the people present couldn't remain calm. One had to know that they were still supremes, while the weakest Blood Rock spider was comparable to a first-stage human body disaster expert. If they really found it, they would be dead. The probability of finding a Blood Rock spider's nest isn't high. It might not even appear once a month. If someone really finds it, then they will have to pray for good luck. After the red-clothed disciple finished speaking, he went to the side of the pink light pillar. That pink pillar of light came from a huge hole in the ground, which was the Blood Rock mine. After that, Xianxia and the others handed over their interspatial rings and received a new one. Xianxia also took out a supreme-level divine weapon and pretended to be pretentious. All right, from now on, you will come here by yourselves. Remember, you must excavate 30 blood rocks every month. After the red-clothed disciple finished speaking, he turned around and left. There were still a few disciples of the Blood Rock sect at the entrance of the mine. They were in charge of guarding Xianxia's interspatial ring and identity token. After that, Xianxia took the new interspatial ring and jumped into the Blood Rock vein. The Blood Rock mine had just been opened, so it wasn't very big. Before Xianxia even landed, he sensed hundreds of people, all of whom were here to mine the Blood Rock. The great majority of these people were attacking the stone walls with weapons in hand. Of course, there were also some people who practiced martial arts, so they used their fists to smash things. However, the toughness of the stone wall was beyond Xianxia's expectations. This mine was filled with pink rocks, but they were just ordinary rocks. The real Blood Rock was dark red, not these pink rocks. Xianxia glanced around and discovered that his perceptive eye could cover the entire bloodstone mine. To be on the safe side, he found an empty tunnel and started mining. Wei Zhentian. Xianxia immediately summoned Wei Zhentian and said, "It's up to you." Wei Zhentian immediately reformed into a drill and started digging madly into the depths of the mine. As for Xianxia, he directly took out a new shadowless sword. Flowing shadow sword. Bam! The stone wall in front of him exploded, but the defensive power of the stone wall was beyond his expectations. His sword only managed to cut a meter into the wall. He turned to look at Wei Zhentian and found that Wei Zhentian had drilled 5 meters into the wall. "Wei Zhentian, we'll split the loot," Xianxia said to Wei Zhentian. Since normal attacks didn't work, he would try something else. Xianxia's eyes flickered and a silver light shot out. Eye of Nirvana. Boom! The stone wall exploded once again. This time, it was 5 meters away. I didn't expect that even the Eye of Nirvana wouldn't work. Since that's the case, let's try the disintegration eye. Xianxia glared again and shot out 2 disintegration rays. BZZT! The disintegration rays hit the stone wall and it quickly turned into ashes. What a fast disintegration speed! Xianxia was shocked. In the blink of an eye, the stone wall in front of him became much more spacious. At least 100 square meters had been disintegrated. However, Xianxia suddenly thought of something. Would the disintegration eye disintegrate the blood rock as well? Coincidentally, Wei Zhentian suddenly threw a blood rock over. Other people can only dig 1 meter into the stone wall in an hour. My speed is considered fast. Xianxia thought for a while and then placed the blood rock on the ground. Disintegration eye. 2 more disintegration rays were fired, and this time, they hit the blood rock directly. He felt helpless because the blood rock wasn't easy to obtain. It would be a tragedy if the disintegration ray disintegrated the blood rock. Fortunately, the blood rock wasn't an ordinary thing. It wasn't disintegrated by the disintegration ray. After seeing this, Xianxia didn't know how to describe his feelings. After all, the Heavenly Eye clan's bloodline had evolved 3 times. However, this was good news for him. Since it can't be disintegrated, then it's easy. Yi Xian's eyes flickered. In the next moment, he summoned his first doppelganger. Then, he and his doppelganger attacked together. Using the disintegration eye at the same time doubled their efficiency. The disintegration eye consumed less eye energy than the eye of nirvana, but the divine tree of life couldn't recover eye energy. Therefore, Yi Xian was mining while searching. Found it. The divine eye chapter can increase eye energy and the recovery speed of eye energy. Yi Xian found something good in the new exchange system. Unfortunately, he didn't have enough super devouring crystals, so he had to devour the blood rock he obtained. The first level of the divine eye chapter requires 10 blood rocks. What a scam. Yi Xian was slightly helpless. Now, he still lacked 9 blood rocks to exchange for the first level of the divine eye chapter. Fortunately, he had Wei Zhentian. Little Tian, mine 9 blood rocks for me first, Yi Xian said to Wei Zhentian. Just now, Wei Zhentian had only mined for a short while. In fact, he was lucky to have obtained a blood rock. As for the second blood rock, Yi Xian had to wait for half an hour. 10 blood rocks also took Yi Xian an entire morning. Ding! Host has learned the divine eye chapter. The system notified. Spending 10 blood rocks to exchange for the first level of the divine eye chapter was indeed worth it. Yi Xian had just learned it, but his eye energy limit had doubled. My eye energy recovery speed has also increased. Good, the efficiency has increased again. Yi Xian was wild with joy. In a day, he could at least collect 30 blood rocks. More importantly, he could pass the human body disaster with just a few more blood rocks. At that time, his mining speed would at least double. Another half a day passed. When Yi Xian devoured the 20th blood rock, he finally heard the system's notification. Chapter 941. Ding! Host has broken through. Currently at first grade human body disaster. Breaking through from the Supreme Being to the Supreme Being, 3 minor disasters didn't require anything, so Yi Xian successfully broke through. His aura skyrocketed the moment he broke through. Not only that, but his physique also improved by several times. His combat strength increased by at least 5 times. Physical body disaster. What I train is the physical body. Right now, my physical body's defense is even stronger than the sovereign golden body. The sovereign golden body is completely useless to me. Yi Xian thought to himself. Now, he could use the Beast God Bloodline's Beast King Rampage skill again. Previously, Luoluo had mutated twice, and the Beast God Bloodline had also mutated twice. Coupled with the upgrade of the Devouring system, the Beast King Rampage skill increased by 3 times, reaching 60%. However, after breaking through, Yi Xian put his mind on another matter. Wei Zhentian was still mining, and Yi Xian took out a round jade pendant. This round jade pendant was given to Yi Xian by old immortal Jianghu, and it recorded the Yin Yang old ancestors' information. Yi Xian wrapped the round jade pendant with his vital energy, and then, 8 words appeared on the jade pendant. Glazed light sacred ground, Yin Yang temple. After seeing these 8 words, Yi Xian's face immediately froze, because the name of the sacred ground wasn't Panglai, but glazed light. Damn it, it's not the Panglai sacred ground. Then where is the glazed light sacred ground? Yi Xian frowned as he thought. The size of the Panglai sacred ground was beyond his imagination, and he didn't know how long it would take to travel from the Panglai sacred ground to the glazed light sacred ground. Luoluo, help me ask where the glazed light sacred ground is. Yi Xian immediately asked Luoluo. Okay. Luoluo responded. Not long after, she replied. Master said that there is a teleportation array between the glazed light sacred ground and the Panglai sacred ground. However, it would take at least 10 years to travel from the Bloodrock sect to the teleportation array. What, 10 years? Yi Xian exclaimed. This was a conservative estimate based on the realm of Luoluo's master, an elder of the Bloodrock sect. Furthermore, this was only the glazed light sacred land, not the Yin Yang temple. It would appear that Yin Yang old ancestor has a very powerful background. No wonder old immortal Jianghu said that I am far too lacking. Yi Xian felt extremely bitter in his heart. He had spent half a year to break through from the Supremacy Realm to the 3 sovereign prefectures of Supremacy Realm. Although old immortal Jianghu said that as long as the frequency of Song Sui Jing and Adjudicator Song did not match, they would not be able to successfully fuse. However,
What if the Yin Yang ancestor had other tricks up his sleeve? No matter what, he had to increase his strength as soon as possible, and then go to the glazed light Holy Land. Wei Zhentian, continue mining. Yi Xian immediately ordered. Now that he had broken through to the first stage of human body disaster, his mining speed had doubled. Furthermore, he possessed the bloodline of the divine tree of life, so he did not need to rest. Therefore, what he wanted to do now was to mine through the night. Although Wei Zhentian was a Dharma treasure, it could still devour blood rocks to improve. As it continued to refine blood rocks, its mining speed would also continue to increase. With the three-pronged approach, their efficiency was unparalleled. Yi Xian had just entered the blood rock mine today, but he had already mined 100 blood rocks. If this was known by others, they would probably be scared to death. A day later, Yi Xian left with more than 40 blood rocks. Luo, have you collected my forging materials? Yi Xian asked. Yes, but these materials are surprisingly cheap. I exchanged 1 blood rock for 100 sets of materials for the shadowless sword. Luo replied. Then I will see you at the mountain gate. After Yi Xian finished speaking, he directly left the mine and placed a blood rock in his interspatial ring and handed it over. On the first day, he had mined more than 100 blood rocks, devoured 20 of them, and divided the rest equally with Wei Zhentian. However, he felt that the most profitable thing was still forging supremacy spiritual treasures. When a blood rock sect disciple outside the blood rock mine saw Yi Xian, he could not help but ask, "Hey, junior brother, you have broken through. Do you want to be promoted to an ordinary disciple, or continue to mine blood rocks as a servant disciple?" If he was promoted to an ordinary disciple, he would not be able to continue mining blood rocks. This was because the mining speed of blood rock sect's servant disciples was equal to the speed at which the blood rocks were condensed. If an ordinary disciple were to mine, the blood rock mine would be cleared very quickly and no more blood rocks would be condensed. I will not be promoted for the time being. Thank you, senior brother. Yi Xian thanked him and then left. If the blood rock sect disciple knew that Yi Xian had mined more than 100 blood rocks in a day, he would probably be scared to death. After leaving the blood rock mine, Yi Xian rushed towards the mountain gate of the blood rock sect. When the blood rock sect disciple had brought them here, many of them were extremely slow, so it took them an hour to get back. Now that Yi Xian had broken through, it only took him 10 minutes to return to the blood rock sect. Young master over here. Luo waved at Yi Xian in front of the mountain gate. Her pure and beautiful appearance, coupled with the inexplicable attraction of the bewitching clan to men, attracted the gazes of many blood rock sect disciples. Luo knew this very well. Fortunately, she had called out Yi Xian in her mind. Otherwise, Yi Xian would have become the public enemy. Yi Xian quickly rushed over and took the interspatial ring from Luo's hand. He said helplessly, "Why are the materials here so cheap? 1 blood rock can be exchanged for 100 sets of blood rocks, and a supreme spiritual treasure costs at least 100 blood rocks?" After he finished speaking, he used the 100 sets of materials to forge a total of 100 shadowless swords. Luo, take these 100 swords to the weapon hall to have a look. Yi Xian passed the interspatial ring back to her. Okay, I will go now. Luo replied and then ran away as fast as she could. The surrounding people were dumbfounded. Yi Xian took the interspatial ring and passed it back. Moreover, the two of them were silent. In the end, Luo suddenly ran away. Was this a pantomime? Yi Xian waited at the mountain gate. After a while, Luo said helplessly, "Young master, the shadowless sword is too lousy. It can barely be considered a supreme spiritual treasure. The old man in the weapon hall said that he would only give you 100 blood rocks for 100 of them." What? A shadowless sword for a single blood rock? Did he cheat you because you are young? Yi Xian was confused in the cold wind. The shadowless sword was a supreme spiritual treasure. No matter how many supreme spiritual treasures there were, it couldn't be so lousy that it was only worth a single blood rock. It's true. He used a supreme spiritual treasure as a comparison. In the end, the shadowless sword was cut in half. Luo explained. Cough. Yi Xian was speechless. It seemed that the shadowless sword was really lousy. Speaking of which, the 10,000 swordsman's skills were not very good. They had worked hard to forge the sword embryo of the shadowless sword, but they were unable to forge a complete shadowless sword. Chapter 942.
The shadowless sword can only be considered a quasi-supreme spirit treasure. After all, the forging materials are available in the Burning Sun Hall. As for the weapons in the Bloodrock sect, they use blood rocks, so it's reasonable for them to be more expensive. Yi Xian comforted himself before asking, "Then ask them if they can get the forging blueprints for supreme spirit treasures?"
"They can't," Luo replied.
"All right, then go and get some more forging materials. A piece of blood rock for 100 pieces of blood rock is not a loss."
Yi Xian quickly reacted. "Amen, I'll go now."
Luo also felt that this was a good deal. As long as they did this a few more times, they would be rich. However, things weren't as simple as Yi Xian thought. "Young master, one of the materials for the shadowless sword, fallen star whip, and everlasting hatred blade is too low grade. The Bloodrock sect doesn't have it." Luo's voice sounded again. This time, Yi Xian really wanted to cry, but no tears came out. If the materials were high grade, the Bloodrock sect wouldn't have it. However, the materials were too low grade. When Yi Xian found out, he almost vomited blood.
"Give me as much as you can."
Yi Xian could only give up on this path to riches and earn the last bit. In the end, Luo only brought 30 materials for the shadowless sword. They earned another 30 blood rocks. The new exchange system allows us to buy supreme spirit treasures directly. However, the Bloodrock sect can forge their own supreme spirit treasures. If we buy them from the exchange system, we won't earn much. Instead, we'll attract attention. It's better to keep a low profile. Yi Xian decided to give up and obediently work as a miner. Actually, being a miner wasn't that bad. Currently, he was mining 100 pieces of blood rock a day, which meant that he would be able to harvest 3,000 pieces of blood rock a month. Furthermore, the mission only required him to hand in 30 pieces.
In less than a month, he would be able to break through to the second stage of human body disaster.
"Right. Did you ask about the value of the sword-shaped stone?" Yi Xian asked again. He had forgotten about the sword-shaped stone. "Not yet. Master suddenly went into seclusion, so we have to wait for a while. Or I can ask others."
Luo shook her head.
"Then let's wait and ask her when she comes out. Don't show off your wealth." Yi Xian shook his head. They were new here, so it would be better if fewer people knew about the sword-shaped stone. At most, Luo's teacher would know. Then, Yi Xian left. Luo was about to break through to human body disaster in a short period of time. However, in order to save time, he had returned to the Bloodrock mine to mine.
Now that he had broken through to the first layer of human body disaster, he would be able to mine more than 100 blood rocks every day.
After all, both his and Wei Zhentian's strength would continue to increase. He entered the Bloodrock mine again and summoned his doppelganger and Wei Zhentian to continue digging. Megatron was like a harvester. Its digging speed was much faster than Yi Xian's. However, after breaking through to Yi Xian of the 3 supreme sovereign disasters, the experience required to level up had greatly increased. Thus, he estimated that he would still need a few more days before he could break through. In the Bloodrock mine, there were people mining the Bloodrock all the time. At this moment, Yi Xian suddenly thought of an idea. "Megatron, 10,000 swords return to origin." Yi Xian ordered Wei Zhentian. 10,000 swords return to origin was a move that Wei Zhentian obtained after being refined into Sky-Shaking Sword. It was extremely powerful. This move had a cooldown time of 1 day. Since he was not going out to train, it would be a waste not to use it. After receiving the order, Wei Zhentian immediately reformed into Sky-Shaking Sword. Then, it divided into 100 swords in this spacious area. Xiao! 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 Immediately, a gale whistled in the mine. The duration of 10,000 swords returned to origin would increase according to Wei Zhentian's level. Currently, Wei Zhentian was only at the first layer of human body disaster. However, he could still maintain it for more than 10 seconds. After more than 10 seconds, Yi Xian had dug out a hole the size of a football field in the mine. Holy shit, it's really amazing. 10 seconds saved me at least 2 to 3 hours. Yi Xian inwardly swallowed his saliva. At this time, Wei Zhentian had also returned to his drill bit form. Following that, Yi Xian swept a glance over and discovered that they had actually extracted more than 30 blood rocks. This was truly a burst of luck.
"Wei Zhentian, I'll give them all to you,"
Yi Xian said very generously. After Wei Zhentian heard this, he immediately jumped over in joy and swallowed all the blood rocks. After transforming from an earth spirit into an earth sovereign, Wei Zhentian's refining speed was really too shocking. He only needed 1 minute to refine 1 blood rock. Yi Xian also gave all the blood rocks he had obtained to Wei Zhentian. That was because he felt that Wei Zhentian would break through faster than him. After all, Wei Zhentian had a 40% increase in growth speed. On the second day, Yi Xian calculated that they had extracted more than 160 blood rocks. Even a first-grade human body disaster expert would only be able to extract 10 blood rocks at most. However, Yi Xian had extracted more than 10 times that amount. Other people would need to rest after mining for a period of time, but Yi Xian had the bloodline of the divine tree of life and could mine without rest throughout the year. He only needed to hand in a few blood rocks when it was time. Just like this, Yi Xian stayed in the blood rock mine for a total of 4 days. Ding! Wei Zhentian leveled up. A system notification rang out. You've finally broken through. Yi Xian's main body stopped and revealed a gratified smile to Wei Zhentian. His nurturing of Wei Zhentian was not in vain. Currently, Wei Zhentian's level, if converted to a human's level, would be second-grade human body disaster. Originally, before he broke through, he and Yi Xian could extract 200 blood rocks together. Now that he had broken through, he should be able to extract at least 100 blood rocks, right? Good fellow, come, myriad swords return to origin. Yi Xian commanded. In the next moment, Wei Zhentian turned back into the sky-shaking sword and split into over 100 clones. Yi Xian calculated that Wei Zhentian would break through today, so he kept the myriad swords return to origin. This time, the myriad swords return to origin opened up an area the size of 3 football fields. 87 blood rocks, awesome! Yi Xian praised. Since Wei Zhentian had broken through, then he would have to level up himself. Immediately, he devoured all 87 blood rocks. After that, he used the Super Devour Crystal of about 100 blood rocks to exchange for the second grade of the Divine Eye chapter, increasing his eye power once again. The increase in the upper limit of his eye power and the recovery speed of his eye power also led to an increase in Yi Xian's mining speed. He calculated that he could collect about 400 pieces of blood rocks a day. Haha, I've really earned a lot. Yi Xian laughed loudly in his heart. Now, even if he was given 10,000 blood rocks to become an inner disciple, he definitely wouldn't do it. Although excessive mining of blood rocks would cause the blood rock mine to dry up, Yi Xian couldn't be bothered with that. Chapter 943. Another 3 days passed. Ding! Host has made a breakthrough. Host is currently at second stage human body disaster. On the 7th day after Yi Xian entered the blood rock mine, he finally made a breakthrough. This time, his mining speed increased once again. With my current speed, I should be able to mine 600 pieces of blood rock every day. Mine for 1.5 days is equivalent to 2 years of work for an ordinary person. Yi Xian was inwardly delighted. The other odd job disciples, including Yi Xian himself, were given 30 pieces of blood rock every month, which meant 360 pieces of blood rock every year. And he could mine 600 pieces of blood rock every day, which meant that in 1.5 days, he would be equivalent to 2 years of work for an ordinary person. Suddenly, a sense of superiority rose from the bottom of Yi Xian's heart. 600 pieces of blood rock every day, which meant that in 10 days, he would be able to make a breakthrough to third stage human body disaster in less than a month. At the same time, not long after Yi Xian made a breakthrough, Luo sent him another message. Young Master, Master said that the elementary sword-shaped stone can be used for 50,000 pieces of blood rock. Luo replied. All right, the sword-shaped stone is with you. You can use it to buy cultivation resources. Yi Xian nodded. 50,000 pieces of blood rock was not a small amount. If he had all of them, he would be able to make a breakthrough to third stage human body disaster. Then what about you, young master? Luo asked. No need. I am currently earning 600 pieces of blood rock every day. I am self-sufficient. Yi Xian shook his head. Thank you, young master. With these, I can make a breakthrough to third stage human body disaster in a month. Luo giggled. The beast god's bloodline had mutated twice, which increased Luo's cultivation speed by 40%. In addition to her own bloodline and charm fusion crystal, Luo's 1 month of cultivation was equivalent to others' 1 year of cultivation. Most importantly,
Lualua was only 15 years old. Her potential was limitless. Yi Xian continued to mine blood rock. Although his mining speed was fast, he still needed to provide for Wei Zhentian and Lualua's cultivation. Therefore he had to work hard. However, at this time, rumble! Suddenly, a deafening sound reverberated throughout the entire blood rock mine, causing the entire mine to shake. This loud noise made Yi Xian stop what he was doing. What happened? Yi Xian turned his head in confusion. Previously, he had used his strength to chase the group of odd job disciples to other places, so there was no one around. However, at this moment, a loud voice suddenly entered the range of his senses. Spider? Blood rock spider? Yi Xian raised an eyebrow. With his perceptive eye, he could sense that this was a creature with 8 legs. Without a doubt, this was the blood rock spider that the red-clothed disciple had mentioned. Previously, the red-clothed disciple had said that in a mine, they might not necessarily find a blood rock spider nest once a month. But now, a bloodstone spider had appeared. This meant that someone had accidentally dug into the bloodstone spider's nest. Ding! Random quest triggered. Stop the bloodstone spider tide. If one bloodstone spider rushes out of the bloodstone mine, the quest will fail. If the quest is successful, 1 devour point will be awarded. The system suddenly prompted. Hearing this, Yi Xian's eyes lit up with greed. As long as he completed this quest, he would be able to obtain 1 devour point. This was a good opportunity. Wei Zhentian, let's go. Yi Xian hurriedly called Wei Zhentian over. Wei Zhentian turned back into the Skyquake sword and was held in Yi Xian's hand. Immediately, Yi Xian rushed out. Random quests were not easy to come by. If this group of blood rock spiders rushed out of the bloodstone mine, the quest would fail, and the devour point would be wasted. Although he was far from the entrance of the mine, with his strength, he could reach the entrance in 2 to 3 seconds. However, there were some giant blood rock spiders blocking the way. The smaller the mine, the weaker the blood rock spider. This mine is the smallest in the bloodstone sect, so the blood rock spiders are not strong. Yi Xian's eyes flashed. There were 10 blood rock spiders blocking the way in front, and there were many human corpses below. Seeing this, Yi Xian immediately attacked. Flowing Shadow Sword. Whoosh! With a slash of his sword, he directly killed several blood rock spiders. With 3 slashes, he cleaned up all the blood rock spiders. Then, he quickly collected the blood rock spiders' corpses. These blood rock spiders were transcendent saint beasts, and Yi Xian still had a trump card, which was the Beast King Rage, so he needed a large number of corpses. He could use this opportunity to collect the blood rock spiders' corpses. Along the way, he cut through all obstacles. After killing dozens of blood rock spiders, he arrived at the entrance of the mine. Someone had accidentally dug into the nest of the blood rock spiders, but there were already disciples guarding the mine, so the blood rock spiders had not yet reached the entrance. Seeing this, Yi Xian heaved a sigh of relief. Then, he rushed down again and began to madly attack the blood rock spiders that kept coming out. According to past experience, there were at most 1,000 blood rock spiders in a bloodstone mine of this level. 1,000 blood rock spiders were equivalent to 1,000 first-grade human body disaster warriors. There were 2 blood rock sect disciples guarding the bloodstone mine. Including the one at the entrance, there were 3 in total. These 3 people were all at 2nd-grade human body disaster. The 3 of them were enough to resist this wave of blood rock spiders, not to mention that they also had Yi Xian's help. 160, 170, 180. Yi Xian hunted the blood rock spiders while collecting the corpses. He was also very helpless because the blood rock spider's level was not high, and he was already at 2nd-grade human body disaster, so he needed more than 100 corpses. In addition, there were still 3 other blood rock sect disciples fighting with him, so he estimated that he would not be able to gather enough corpses for 1 Beast King Rage. In less than 20 seconds, Yi Xian's group of 4 had already cleaned up more than 1,000 blood rock spiders. At the same time, Yi Xian himself collected 600 corpses. Junior brother, you actually broke through to 2nd-grade human body disaster? Suddenly, a surprised voice sounded. Yi Xian turned his head and saw that it was the blood rock sect disciple who had kept his universe ring at the entrance of the mine. It was just a coincidence, Yi Xian said with a smile. A first-grade human body disaster warrior could become an ordinary disciple of the blood rock sect.
For Yi Xian to break through to second-grade human body disaster in such a short time, how could he still be a servant disciple? The sacred beast souls of the 600 blood rock spider corpses were all devoured by Yi Xian. He estimated that a sacred beast soul was about the same value as a blood rock. The sacred beast souls of the 600 blood rock spiders had increased his cultivation by a lot.